Good evening, everyone. All right, we'll go ahead and get started. It is 7 o'clock. We'll go ahead and start our regular meeting. Good evening to the public. And will you please go ahead and do the roll call?
Councilmember McQuay?
Here.
Councilmember Nason?
Here.
Councilmember Tiedemann?
Here.
Vice Mayor Jordan? He is here.
Sorry.
And
Okay,
Mayor
no
Gary.
worries.
Mayor Gary?
Present. Thank you. Present. All right, we'll go ahead and go to item number 3. City Manager, can you report on the closed session on May 24th?
On May 24th, the council met in closed session to receive an update on the status of negotiations with SEIU regarding an additional holiday. The item was directed by council to continue in upcoming negotiations.
All right, thank you so much. Now we'll go to ceremonial matters. And we're at item 4, number 1. Councilmember McQuay, go ahead and do the Elder Abuse Awareness Proclamation. Thank you.
Thank you. City of Albany Proclamation in recognition of Elder Abuse Awareness Month, June 2021. Whereas victims of elder abuse include both men and women of diverse educational, socioeconomic, or ethnic backgrounds who have been victimized by strangers and or by persons they know who may occupy a position of trust, including family members, neighbors, friends, and others with whom the elder interacts. And whereas over a year after the 2020 coronavirus pandemic became a concern in the United States, it continues to impact everyone, especially elders, by making fragile living situations more stressful, thereby putting elders more at risk for their physical safety and well-being, making reporting suspected elder abuse and neglect more difficult, as well as giving those who commit scams an opportunity to morph existing scams and create new scams to prey upon the concerns and fears of vulnerable members of society in order to obtain their money and property. And whereas the Alameda County Social Services Agency, Adult Protective Services, and the Ombudsman Services of Alameda and Contra Costa and Solano counties responds to reports from individuals, concerned citizens, social service and health providers, and law enforcement representatives about elders who may be physically or financially abused, neglected, or exploited. And whereas the Alameda County District Attorney's Office, its Elder Protection Unit, and its Witness Division, Victim Witness Division provides a network of services to elders who are in danger of becoming or have become victims of abuse, neglect, or financial exploitation, and which services include holding community workshops to promote crime prevention awareness, assisting with locating services for elders, working with the Albany Police Department as well as with other professionals, and prosecuting cases of elder abuse, neglect, and financial exploitation. And whereas the Albany Senior Center provides a comprehensive array of services, as well as social and recreational programs to meet the needs of the elder population, thereby enhancing their quality of life and helping them to remain active, healthy, safe, and independent. And whereas the City of Albany recognizes that both the awareness of elder abuse and neglect, as well as reporting instances of suspected elder abuse, neglect, and financial exploitation, particularly in this stressful time of a global pandemic, will help keep our elders and community safer. Now, therefore, be it proclaimed that the Albany City Council hereby recognizes June 2021 as Elder Abuse Awareness Month and June 15th, 2021 as World Elder Abuse Awareness Day in the City of Albany, and recognition of elders being valuable members of our city and having the right to live safely and securely in our community. Signed, Janelle Gary, Mayor.
Thank you, Councilmember McQuaid. We have the Assistant Deputy District Attorney. Would you like to have a few words?
I would. Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Councilmember
Wade, and members of the Albany City Council, staff, and residents of the City of Albany. On behalf of District Attorney Nancy O'Malley and the Alameda County DA's Office Elder Protection Unit, I want to thank all of you again for recognizing the importance of elder abuse awareness. This continues to be a very challenging and stressful time in our local community, in our state, our country, and the world. I can't think of another time in my life where so much has gone so wrong with so many people at risk for a variety of reasons. Unfortunately, amongst those reasons, besides COVID, is elder abuse. Elder abuse continues in our community, in our nation, and in the world. Keeping the community aware of it, particularly in times of great stress such as now, is vital. The reality is that abuse, neglect, or financial exploitation of any kind simply does not stop by itself. It may take a village to raise a child, as Hillary Clinton has told us, but it does take an entire community working together to end elder abuse, neglect, and financial exploitation. The reality is that the very place where seniors should be safe may not be a very safe place. An important way to keep the community aware of this important issue is proclamations such as this, and talking about the issues and finding ways to help. Reporting suspected abuse to law enforcement, adult protective services, and if there is in a skilled nursing facility, to the ombudsman services is vital. Then skilled investigators can evaluate the situation for the best resolution. So thank you all again for acknowledging the importance of elder abuse awareness.
Thank you. All right, we'll move to item number 4.2, which is a proclamation of the 100th anniversary of the Tulsa Massacre. Unfortunately, the recipient was not able to attend the meeting, so we'll just acknowledge that this is the 100th anniversary of this massacre, and it's been acknowledged. So we'll move down to item number 4.3 for the proclamation for Zonta Club of Berkeley and North Bay Day. Whereas on November 8, 1919, a small group of pioneering women in Buffalo, New York, came together with an idea to form an organization to help women achieve gender equality while using their individual and collective expertise and service to the local community. And whereas the organization, which became Zonta International, has grown to be a leading global service organization with 29,000 members in 62 countries, committed to empowering women and making gender equality a reality for women and girls throughout the world. Since 1923, Zonta International has donated over $46 million to inspire women and expand access to education, healthcare, economic opportunity, and safe living conditions. And whereas since 1998, Zonta International has focused on helping to end violence against women as its main goal, and has provided more than $10 million to support Zonta Says No to Violence Against Women projects to prevent and end violence against women and girls in 46 countries. And whereas 12 million girls are married before the age of 18 each year, and 650 million women alive today were married as children, Zonta recently adopted an additional signature project to end child marriage worldwide, and is partnering with UNICEF and UNFPA to accelerate actions to end child marriage in 12 countries. And whereas the Zonta Club of Berkeley and North Bay is the local affiliate of Zonta International and is comprised of women living primarily in the cities of Alameda, Contra Costa, and San Francisco counties, who have pursued the goals of Zonta in our local communities since 1936 through service and advocacy, working with the California School of the Deaf and Blind, Campfire Girls and Girl Scouting, Berkeley and Oakland Public Schools, Meals on Wheels, Women's Cancer Resource Center, St. Vincent's Day Home, University of California Scholarship Programs, Albany Berkeley Girls Softball League, Women's Daytime Drop-In Center, Alameda County's Heat Watch Program, as well as other nonprofits and government organizations. And whereas the members and friends of the Zonta Club of Berkeley and North Bay will be celebrating its 85th birthday on June 8, 2021, after more than a year of adapting and developing new methods of working together through the recent pandemic, and will continue to fight for women's equality and end to all violence against women, and pursue its mission to advance the status of women and girls throughout the San Francisco Bay Area and to the sisters around the world. Now therefore be it proclaimed that I, Janelle Gary, as mayor of the city of Albany, and city council members do hereby recognize the achievements of the Zonta Club of Berkeley, North Bay, and proclaim June 8, 2021 as Zonta Club of Berkeley, North Bay Day. And we have Susan Clifford to speak.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor Gary. I don't think I can add very much to that. That really says everything. Maybe I could say that there are 32 districts worldwide, and we belong to District 9, which includes Arizona, California, Hawaii, Nevada, and Utah. And also, there are 25,000 members of Zonta International worldwide in 63 countries. So we are part of a much larger movement, and yet there's so much that we're doing right here in our own neighborhood. So just thank you very, very much, Mayor Gary, for including that. And tomorrow is the 85th anniversary. So I really appreciate that you could slide us in tonight. Thank you so very much.
Thank you so much, Susan. All right, now we're going to item number 5. This is the city manager's report.
Thank you, Mayor. Our fire chief, Lance Calkins, recently retired as of today, and Jim Boyno will now be our interim fire chief. Additionally, we have started our wildland fire season and are doing routine patrolling of Albany Hill. I'm so sorry. My apologies. Also, we are anticipating a more heavy, important fire season this year, and I appreciate the work of our fire department to maintain and be on the lookout. The Parks, Recreation, and Open Space Master Plan is in full swing. We've recently posted some virtual workshops. Please look for those postings. Through the summer months, we'll be working to get input from residents and park users. The first workshop is scheduled for this Sunday, June 13th, 5. You can sign up on our e-notifications for Albany Parks Master Plan, and you'll also see notices posted in our Albany e-news. This June is Pride Month. You will see the flags flying proudly at our city facilities. And recognizing the month, the council adopted a proclamation as well. We're continuing to focus on how to provide core city services throughout the pandemic. As we all know, we're starting to see additional opportunities to open up further, and we're looking forward to returning to in-person meetings. Our staff is working to understand all the rules as they are provided to us to hopefully have our first in-person council meeting in late July. So stay tuned for more details on that. We will work in additional in-person meetings following the initiation of those meetings by the council. And we are continuing to closely monitor the American Rescue Act funding. We are a non-entitlement city, meaning that our allocation comes from the state. currently, as calculated, the city is to receive approximately 4.7 million. This is one-time funding, and staff will be attending an information session on this opportunity this week to further understand the next step and rules associated with the funding. And we will ensure a comprehensive report to the council as soon as we have ample information to provide. That completes my report. Thank you, and apologies again for the noise.
No worries. Thank you so much, City Manager. All right, now we're down to item number 6, which is good of the city and public comment. This is an opportunity where the public can speak for 3 minutes for items that are not on the agenda. I'll give you a few minutes in before you let public comment begin.
Hi, good evening, everybody. And that's the second meeting I've been to today where there was a dog barking. It's amazing how many dogs are barking their way through Zoom meetings. I have a couple comments, but I had a question first, and I'm hoping somebody will answer it after I speak. Could somebody tell me the definition of an elder? Because I actually don't know what the definition of an elder is. And then I had a couple questions about that, the elder abuse and the Zonta Club. I was wondering if flyers were put up around town because I never even heard of the Zonta Club. And so I was just wondering if there's, if notification was sent out. I would love to see people's attention on that. I don't think there are a lot of people attending these meetings. So anyway, the things I was really going to say, city manager's report, I would like to request again that the public be allowed to make comments on this report. I know it specifically says we can't. But I would like to request that we could, because sometimes I have questions and it's really frustrating to listen to a report and want clarification and not be able to address to ask. I'd also like to suggest again that the city start the meetings with a land acknowledgement. I understand there's some concerns that land acknowledgements can be seen token. And so I hope the city will not make it token, but will actually take it seriously, the need for addressing the historic oppression and murder of the original inhabitants of this land by taking direct action. I also think it's important to remind people whose land we're on and that the Ohlone people are still here. I have an example of one that the city could use. I'm happy to share it with you if you're interested. Some of the language is borrowed from the Zagorate Land Trust, which is led by urban indigenous women. So this is my very short suggestion. We acknowledge that Albany is on unceded Muwekma Ohlone land. This land has a deep history and a community of people who have lived here for thousands of years. Living here, we continue to benefit from the seizure and occupation of this land. We also want to affirm that this is not simply performative, but it's deeply felt and is a commitment toward action. And that's all. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your comment.
Hello,
Go
my
ahead.
name is Rasa Petrouskaite, and I'm a volunteer at Compassionate Bay and Direct Action Everywhere. And we're asking you to please make Juneteenth to be a paid holiday just because it's related to, as you know, extremely important racial justice issues and just something we need to commemorate. And so that our generation, next generations, everyone keeps in mind that extremely important historical event and all the significance that it carries. So thank you so much.
Thank you for your comment.
That's it.
That's it? Oh, no, there's someone else.
One more.
Go ahead, please. Is he on mute? I believe you're on mute if you're speaking.
It seems like he may be having audio issues.
All right, we'll go ahead and move to the consent calendar.
We have one more, sorry.
Okay, go ahead.
No, she lowered her hand.
So we have no more? Just want to make sure before I move on.
Jimmy, are you able to speak now?
Yeah, I got it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead.
Sure. My name is Jimmy Wilson. I'm a deputy DA with Alameda County. I'm also a candidate for district attorney in 2022. I believe that we should make Juneteenth a city holiday. And one of the reasons why I feel this way is that I am reminded of my own education. I grew up in the Bayview. Many of my instructors were African American, and I learned about Juneteenth when I was in the 5th and 6th grade. In fact, it impacted me a lot. We used to call it Black Independence Day. That's what both of my teachers used to refer to Juneteenth. And one of the reasons why it's really important is that we are, as leaders and as adults in our community, we must educate our children. We need to teach them about the sacrifice that came before us, about our history, and we can't run away from our history. We have to embrace it. And I'm reminded of the struggle in this country when we were trying to make Martin Luther King's birthday a holiday, and how in 1983, Ronald Reagan signed the bill making it a federal holiday, and it took almost 17 years for the other 50 states to recognize it. And I think as a community, we can be starters, we can be fire starters in that national conversation. Oregon, by the way, just passed Juneteenth as a state holiday. That was done on June 1st. So I think Albany has an opportunity to be a leader in the state. They have a leader in this community to change the way we feel about our history and to embrace our history and not ignore it.
Thank you for your comment. Is there anyone else? It's like one more. Go ahead, please. You're on mute. Go ahead, please.
Can you hear me?
I can. Go.
I'd like to say good evening. And I too support the Juneteenth holiday for Albany. I support them because it is a great thing to do for the city of Albany. Albany would be the first city to have done this and to recognize that Juneteenth is such a significant holiday for all of the people in Albany, not just African Americans. I understand that 3 of the council members supported a circulated petition renaming Port Chicago and Pittsburgh, or that regional park, to Thurgood Marshall Park. Now, their names are on there. I'm wondering if they understand by putting their names there, why they should definitely support Juneteenth, because Thurgood Marshall would have advocated for this day to be done or passed. That's what he represented. That's what he fought for. So if you supported that and you didn't understand that, let me be clear. This is what you're supporting. He was an advocate for proposals just like Juneteenth, being the first African American on the United States Supreme Court by fighting issues raised just like this one. So if you're supporting that, the message that you're sending, you support him in one area, which he advocated for, but you're not supporting him for Juneteenth, which he would have definitely advocated for had he not been here, had he been here. So I urge you to think carefully and allow Juneteenth to become a paid legal holiday in the city of Albany, California.
Thank you for your comment.
That's all.
Thank you, Ann. All right, we'll go ahead and move to our consent calendar. I will zoom around the room. I'll start with Councilmember Nason.
No, I have nothing.
Councilmember McQuaid.
713, please.
713.
Yes.
Councilmember Tiedemann? Nothing? Okay.
Nothing.
Vice Mayor Jordan?
Councilmember McQuaid, got to before I did. Thank you.
7:13?
Yes. Yes. Thank you for clarifying.
Alright, we'll go out to the public to see if anyone is pulling. You have one?
Yes, I'd like to poll 7-8 and 7-12.
All right. Is that it? Right, I'll bring it back to the council. Let's start with 7-8. Go ahead.
I'll jump in on this if I may, Mayor. So I actually had an exchange with staff earlier today about the design or lack of design for some of the curb ramp replacements. And my understanding from staff was that staff was going to pull this item and hold it over for some upgrades of the drawings, which is not to suggest that the attendee shouldn't be able to comment, but that's my understanding. I don't know if staff could clarify that since they didn't give that indication before consent calendar or during consent calendar.
That's correct, Vice Mayor Jordan. I'm sorry, I didn't have time to jump in. Yes, we're pulling items 7-8 to do some corrections and return it at your next meeting.
Okay, so 7-8 is pulled. All right, 7-12.
Well, if I may, since an attendee requested 7-8 being pulled, perhaps we could go ahead and get their comment now in any case, because they might have useful input.
And you can bring them up.
I actually, am I on twice? I'm getting an echo. No echo for you. I was only pulling it because I live really close to Washington and there's been a huge amount of disruption in our lives, and it's going to continue with this project. And I'm not suggesting you don't do the project. I'm suggesting that the city acknowledge the people who live in the area. I don't know what it would be. I thought about like leaving flowers on their front porch or sending them a nice note or some way of acknowledging that we've been really under siege since this has been going on. The noise is unbelievable and it's been going on for months and it sounds like it's going to go on for months more. And I'm off of Washington, so I'm thinking about the people on Washington. I just thought it would be really nice if the city would acknowledge what people are going through as this work is being done. Thank you.
Thank you so much. You want to go ahead and comment on your next item, 7-12? Julie? Thank you.
Okay, are you starting the timer over again?
Yes, it'll get started over. Go ahead and speak.
Okay, so I had a lot of, this is the camping one. I just don't understand it, actually, is one of my questions. It sounds like some parks are being added to the list, and then I'm not clear, are the parks going to be closed even though there's this law that protects people if they don't have someplace else to go? The Martin law is, legal decision. I'm just not clear on what this exactly means, and I was hoping somebody would explain it. I also have an objection to some of the language that's being used. For example, indigent homeless people. I think there must be a better term than using that. There's a typo. And I also wanted to point out that just because somebody is offered transportation, offered a place to live, I guess my question is, does that mean in Albany or is that just anywhere in the Bay Area? And if they turn it down because they don't feel safe, for example, you're 19 years old, you're trans, they say, here's a shelter where you can go, and you turn it down, does that mean you just have no place to go? Like, I don't understand. So I'm hoping that somebody will explain more about that. And then also it says, for the reasons and the prevention of greater health, welfare, and safety risks to people in the city experiencing homelessness and the general public. And I'm not really clear on citing people who need to sleep in a park or sleep somewhere and have a bathroom available, how that helps them and makes them feel safer or be safer. I also had a question about the whole concept of people might be inside their tents taking drugs, or I can't remember what the other thing was, whereas I think it's much more likely that people in the houses in Albany have weapons or taking drugs rather than somebody in a tent. And I think that the whole slant of this is odd and prejudicial. But maybe what you're going to say to me is that this actually doesn't apply to anybody because of this other thing. I'm really hoping that somebody will explain that. And when it says the city council, let me see. Oh, what are the hours in the circumstance in which the provisions of the section will not be enforced pursuant to subsection? There will be during hours to be set by the city council. And I don't know what that means by what are those hours? So you can just see it's not clear, and I feel like clarity would really help. It sounds to me like people aren't going to be allowed to sleep anywhere in Albany, if they don't have a house, in a vehicle, in a tent, in a hut, anything. But maybe that's not true. So I'm hoping there'll be some clarity, and you could fix your typo while you're at it. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your comment. City Attorney, can you address some of the following questions that have been brought up regarding this item?
Sure, Mayor Gary. The ordinance, as we talked about at our last council meeting, is in line with the recent case, Martin v. Boise, and it provides that if we are unable to provide for shelter for an individual who's experiencing homelessness, then they would be permitted to camp in certain locations. We also provide in the ordinance and the attached resolution certain hours of operations for our city parks. And then we do prohibit at all times camping in certain locations, such as the waterfront and Albany Hill. So it has kind of an array of requirements. Many existed already in the code, but we also wanted to update it because of the case law. We have been complying with the case law, but we wanted to just clarify the ordinance so that it's very clear that it matches with the Ninth Circuit case.
All right, thank you so much. Item number 713. Go ahead, Councilmember McQuaid.
Thank you. I think this looks like a great event, and I'm really looking forward to participating, but I have a few, I think process questions might be a good term for it. I'm wondering who's holding the insurance on this event. I have a bunch of questions. Could I just run through them and then
go ahead.
Have this group? Okay. So yes, the insurance is a question. And I just want to be sure that public safety knows about the street closure and that they'll be able to deliver and pick up the barriers that are needed. And I'm assuming there's garbage and recycling bins are going to be provided, extra ones, since there'll be a lot of people there. Will the porta potty have hand washing included? And then I'm curious about what kind of activities are going to take place. Is it eating and music or whatever? And are there any other permits needed by county health or anything else? Is alcohol going to be sold, served, whatever? It mentions a staff person to do the audiovisual support. Will they be there the entire day? I wasn't quite sure where the $1,000 estimate came from. And then the last question, it says, this will be one of many celebratory events in the city of Albany. And I'm wondering what that means. Are there other events? Are staff going to be going from event to event, or just trying to kind of get a scope of what's entailed here?
All right, so this Juneteenth event, we are in partnership. Mr. C's has opened up his doors, as well as Abrams Gallery. They both are insured business owners. They have opened their doors for us to have an event in that place. As far as the garbage pails, I have asked the city manager, could she make sure there's extras? She's looking into that. I don't know if she's already confirmed that she could get those. The porta potties, as far as washing hand, I don't know, because again, I have to defer to the city manager on that, on what type to get. As far as the $1,000 estimate for audio video, again, I will go defer to the city manager for that amount. activities. It's a restaurant and across the street at Abrams Gallery. It's a gallery that he has events in his space. And he holds events, I believe it is every other month or once a month, and I'll have him speak to that as well. But he and Mr. C's are in partnership with working with myself, the school district, and other community leaders to bring this event. Will there be alcohol? So if they go into the restaurant, they can buy alcohol, I'm sure. I don't know what the gallery's gonna serve, so I can't speak to that, but it's a restaurant that has food. He has an alcohol license. I guarantee if someone wants to go in there and drink, they have the option to do that. We will not be hand-holding people and telling them exactly what they can and can't do. This is just an event to bring to the city so people can come out and enjoy the event with Mr. C's as well as Abrams Gallery. As far as public service, again, public safety, again, I would defer to the city manager as we still are working on finalizing the logistics of this plan.
So is it a city event?
Yeah, the city is, I am not asked for any city funds. Again, we are partnering with Mr. C's and we are partnering with Albany, myself, and some school board members. And you had the question about mini celebratory events. We're talking about as far as Juneteenth every year. Our plan, our goal as a group is to bring these events as much as possible to bring to our history. So that's what we mean the celebratory events. I'm sure there are other events that are planned in the city. Those are not what we are referring to in this memo. Councilmember Nason.
Yeah, would it be helpful to include direction to the staff to work with Councilmember McQuaid to assure that the concerns raised are that any concerns raised are properly addressed?
I agree. Thank you. Vice Mayor Jordan.
Yeah, I was just well, now I'm curious that it said it's an event involving a restaurant. Is there going to be dining in the street, or I'm just not clear on what will be going on in the street?
So again, it's in the restaurant. There will be no food on the street. They can go into the restaurant and have food. Now, again, as far as the gallery across the street, I'm not sure. I believe he's on this, his hand is up. So let's hear from him. And then he can explain exactly what he's going to have over at his location. All right, go ahead and bring him in. Thank you, Rob.
Hi, thank you for having me and thank you for letting me participate in the Juneteenth thing. I was brought in only a week ago to this, since I was already planning events for Juneteenth. In my gallery this month is a show, Colors of Juneteenth. And I won't go into what that is exactly. You can find out that online. So we were planning a reception for that show in the late afternoon. At the same time, I'm having an art fair in what people refer to as the Christmas tree lot next to my building. And I have scheduled 2 bands to play there. One since I heard about the march and what Mr. C was doing in coordination with Mayor Gary. So since last Monday, I have found through a new business on the street, Gidi's Dance, I believe it's called, a dance instructor to lead us in dance at the end of the march, and then a band over there called Skip the Needle. And we're hoping that they can perform on that very short section of Masonic adjacent to Mr. C's building. That's what will be happening on the street. My event will be fully contained on my property on the fairground, as I call it, the Christmas tree lot, and in my gallery, and I am fully insured for both of those spaces. If necessary, I will extend my insurance to cover the band and the dancing instructor as well on Masonic. But I don't know if that's necessary. I'll have to talk to the city about that as well. Finally, I don't serve alcohol. My events don't serve alcohol. And So that's a moot issue. I'm not sure what else I need to include other than that. The events will run from, my event will run from 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. with setup starting at approximately 8 a.m. so that we don't disturb the neighbors in the apartment buildings right there.
All right, thank you so much, Mr. Abrams. Bring it back to council. Councilmember McCoy?
Yes, Mr. Abrams, that was great. And I have had your event on my calendar for a while. You mentioned a march, and I don't see that anywhere else. I'm just curious what that's about.
That's not, there will not be a march.
Okay.
All right. All right. Do I have a motion to go ahead and move this consent calendar forward?
Well, actually, I had just one other question. Yeah, which was, and thank you, Mr. Abrams, for the explanation of the street activities. Sounds like fun. I'm just curious, in more general question for events of this nature, how the expenses tend to get coded in the budget, or where they land. It's in the recreation department.
Be happy to answer that question. This is a unique event, as we've heard it's a contribution to an event that is occurring, allowing a street closure and provision of some city resources, and not necessarily a city event. As such, a location in the budget is a bit indeterminate. It will likely come out of the recreation department or the non-departmental. I need to coordinate with our finance director on the most appropriate location.
Okay, well, in that case, I would suggest that perhaps it would be appropriate to code it to the council's discretionary fund. It might simplify matters all around. So that'd be my proposal. The other meets the pleasure of the other council members.
All right, Councilmember Nason?
That was going to be my suggestion.
Okay.
Well, I think having it be a council discretionary expenditure makes perfect sense.
All right, we'll go ahead. Do I have a motion to move this consent forward? With the removal of, I believe it was 7-8?
7-8. Yes, I will so move the consent calendar with asking staff to correspond with the attendee who said they found a typo in one of the resolutions. I couldn't find it myself quickly, so hopefully they'll let us know so we can get that corrected.
Second.
All right, and can I get a roll call, please?
Councilmember McCoy,
Yes.
Councilmember Nason,
Yes.
Councilmember Tiedemann,
Yes.
Mayor Gary,
Yes.
and Vice Mayor Jordan.
Yes.
The motion
right.
carries.
Thank you very much. We will go to item number 8, which is presentations. We'll start with item 8-1.
Okay, good evening. The item before council is the annual contract between the city and the County of Alameda for additional library services. The Albany Library is a branch of the Alameda County Library, and under normal circumstances before the pandemic, is open to the public a total of 41 hours. Of the 41 hours, 25.5 hours are contracted with the Alameda County Library. The remaining 15.5 hours are covered by the county. The fiscal year 2021 agreement between the City of Albany and the County of Alameda for additional library services is in the amount of $725,440, the same amount requested for the previous 5 years. The City of Albany levies 2 special taxes approved by voters to pay for the additional 25.5 hours. I believe Darshan Chadha, Alameda County Library Finance Services Officer, and Ben Gumberg, Alameda County Library Division Director, are here this evening to provide a status and overview of the contract and activities and services offered at the library at this time.
Isabel, I don't see Darshan, so perhaps if he's in the audience, if he can raise his hand.
Okay.
I'm not seeing him. Oh,
I think it may be him now. Coming in? No.
Mr. Chaha, if you are in the audience, please raise your hand. I believe is star 6 or star 9. Sorry.
Okay. Ben, would you like to start? And see if
Certainly,
Darshan comes later?
Certainly, and if Darshan doesn't make it, I will attempt to muddle through the contract language myself. But good evening, Mayor Gary, council members, city staff, thanks for having us. And I'm sorry, Rachel Scher couldn't be here this evening. She's taking a well-earned vacation at the moment, but I wanted to update you all on the goings-on at the Albany Library over the last several months, I think, since the council has had an update, as well as some of the items we have planned for the near future, and then segue into the contract for services for the next fiscal year. So I will see if I can pull up your brief presentation and see if I can make that work. Hopefully folks are able to see this. And if not, please let me know. So just to touch back on the county library. So the Albany location is one of our 10 different library locations throughout the county. And our organization in 2019 reaffirmed our new library mission statement, which is short enough to remember. So we like to mention it as often as possible. And that it's grow learners, break barriers, and build futures. And we focus our work through these 4 areas that you see on the screen. And so we try to make sure not only our new services, but also the individual programs the library works towards and our day-to-day operations focus in these areas. One of the projects here in the Albany community at the moment is funded by the Young Bequest, which was a generous donation through the city that supports the library. And that is these volumes, these tomes here on the right side of the screen are bound copies of the Albany Journal, which are finally being converted into a digital format to support researchers and authors, community members who are interested in Albany's history. So we're excited to be able to bring that project forward and hopefully make that available to the community in the near future. Got a little slide here on our current services that visitors to the library lately will be familiar with. So we had to vacate our library operations at the onset of the pandemic, but we're able to begin a no contact based service in early June. We've just passed a year of that service last summer. And this April, so just about 2 months ago, we were able to open our doors again. So we do have visiting hours inside of the library for anyone who wants to come on by. We're open 2 hours at a time and have a break in between 2 sessions most days. So we're open Tuesday afternoons and then afternoon and morning sessions Wednesday through Saturday. Moment. We're still working towards sort of the next level of our service returning, and that includes our in-person volunteers, our in-person programs, and the balance of those service hours. So that's something we'll touch on a little bit again in the contract. Just to get a picture of what the library's operation has been like this past year, volume of material is definitely still there. Community members are very grateful to have the library around, particularly when so many other services have not been available. So you can see some numbers here, 100 members per day being served by that pickup experience, which is certainly not what we would have seen in pre-pandemic times. far more people come through the library, but we're definitely able to help satisfy a lot of people's reading needs, and particularly families who are very grateful of the library's work during the period where they couldn't visit. An example of that, we've got quite a few of these throughout, but just beautiful handwritten notes from members of all ages, really their gratitude for having library services in a time when a lot of familiar resources were not available. And our book bundles, which was sort of the opportunity to offer an extra whenever somebody had something to pick up at the library, were extraordinarily popular, and thousands of books or members were happy to just pick up along with whatever they could find from this. So I think there's actually a great archival project in this for us someday to go back to the history of this. Throughout the pandemic, we've been experimenting with online events, which is something that the library definitely was not familiar with before, but it's been a great experience for us. It allowed us to experiment, to bring people to Alameda County from across the country, bring diverse panels on topics that weren't always easy to address in a physical setting, but we think we're learning a lot from it, and we'll certainly continue to do more. You can see Mayor Gary's photo here from a Women in Leadership program she led with the Albany Library. So some of these highlights include our County Reads program, as well as a panel discussing standing up to racism in response to some of the Asian American Pacific Islander hate incidents in the Bay Area, which was really timely and great to hear. And we'll have more. We've got a great panel discussing resilience and creativity in the LGBTQ plus community coming up later in Pride Month. So excited by the different kinds of programming we're able to offer. Some of those include programs for young people. So a lot of creativity and craft for our youngest audiences. Online story time is definitely successful, but not quite the same thing as it is in person. So we've been supporting Dia de los Libros, Dia de los Niños a lot this year, and the county instituted a county-wide Youth Poet Laureate program. So we had that in April, and our process continues. So the results are going to be announced later this summer. The Albany Library in particular has continued its great history of partnerships. So that includes the Film Fest, which was able to do screenings online and actually bring those films to, in some cases, a wide audience. So that was exciting to see where that partnership may be able to lead in the future. Rachel and her team have put a great focus during the pandemic on supporting mental health, knowing just how stretched and stressed community members are. So a lot of different partnerships in here have allowed the creation of some new services, a monthly series, sensory services for able to target children who are on different ability spectrum and help them process feelings, which is useful for children and adults of all ages. And some of the other services around grief and other crises. And going forward, we have through the Albany Library here some short films for Pride Month. The County Library's Summer Adventure Program, which is our new version of summer reading, which will include quite a few book giveaways for families, as well as some great prizes for participants, and continue our tradition of offering a variety of ways to participate, whether it be reading or through other activities. Mental health focus will continue, as well as some other new activities coming up. You can see here, and I think that is our presentation for the goings on at the library. Happy to keep that brief. And maybe someone will let me know if Darshan has made himself visible. If not, I'll be happy to talk a little bit about the contract.
Yeah, I don't see Darshan still.
Okay, thank you so much for the presentation. I'll bring it to the council. If you have any questions? Go ahead, Councilmember Nasa.
Yeah, a question that was brought to me today. Someone wanted to know whether, given the necessary reduction in library services during the period of the last contract, is that funding any unspent funding that could be available for additional future needs?
It is not our money that wasn't spent to us. I think I'd defer back to the city to answer that.
Okay.
Yes, the since the fourth quarter of 2019, the fiscal year 2019-2020, the library has submitted invoices for half of the contract amount. So basically, we've realized the savings of a little over $300,000.
Okay, and that's special fund, so that does remain. Okay.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Vice Mayor Jordan.
Yeah, just I'll suggest to Councilmember Nason that on page 180 of 213 of the budget document is the balance, the accounting for the library property tax revenues and their expenditures. So it kind of lays out all that, and there's quite a balance in the fund now as a result of what we've gone through. But I wanted to ask, and at the hazard of jinxing it, the contract amount has been the same. This would be the 6th year, if I'm understanding it correctly. That's, if I am understanding that correctly, that's remarkably unusual in the government world. So I'm sort of curious how that came about, and if there's anything we can learn on how to make that happen other places.
That would be an answer for the county to provide. I don't have that answer. Sorry, Ben.
I think the library situation is rather unique. In some cases, we've had relatively stable funding compared with a lot of other county agencies as well as cities. Since beyond the city contracts, our primary source of funding is property tax. So we're not as reliant on grant funding or sales tax or others. However, I imagine there will be a time when the contract amount does increase again, but I don't have that information. That would be for our financial officer to answer.
Councilmember Nason.
Maybe this is a question for your financial officer, but I'm wondering on the county side of the budgeting, I think is what I was being asked about. Has the county realized savings from the partial suspension of library services during the pandemic, and is any of that going to be made available if there is?
The county did not furlough staff or reduce staff in any way as a result of the pandemic in the library. So our primary expenditures, if you want to look at the budget there, our primary expenditures are the library personnel and the administrative and direct costs for our technical services and our learning group. And so the library collections continued purchasing. We're buying new books. We spent a lot on electronic resources during the pandemic to keep up with the shift in demand as people couldn't access physical books through browsing. So I would not say that the county had a significant savings. We were not using sort of our ad hoc on-call employees to cover staffing shortages. So there may be a minor savings there, but I wouldn't say it balances out to a lot of extra money.
Okay, thank you. And I would like to express appreciation for the conversion of the, as a local history researcher, it would be just delightful to see the local news digitized. Thank you.
Yeah, I would second that. I actually delved into those for a little bit a few years ago, but then couldn't keep it up. So having them online so I can look at them late at night would be fantastic. And maybe this is a question for city staff, given the contract amount hasn't increased. Has the number of library hours that the contract has purchased decreased over time, or somehow the county's working some magic and giving us the same number of hours for the same absolute dollar amount year after year?
Yes, it's been the same amount for the last 5 years.
Wow. Well, like I say, I'm still would love to know how that trick works. Thanks.
All right. We'll go ahead and bring it to any public comment. We have one. Go ahead, please. You have 2 minutes.
Hi, good evening. So I do believe the presenter mentioned grief crisis or mental health programs with the library. That'd be great if possible, city staff or something could email the SEJC so we could find out what's going on. If there's resources for grief crisis and mental health with the Albany Library, I think that'd be great for the city. It would just be great if it was more transparent on how those programs were available. Also, the $700,000, is that for 5 years or just 1 year? And also, you know, since I was there in high school, the Albany Library still doesn't even have a color printer. So I was thinking in the budget, maybe we can add a color printer for the public. That way, you know, kids got to turn in a report for school, color instead of black and white. Also, I just want to say thank you for the 24-hour Wi-Fi service during the pandemic. Also, I was wondering if it's possible to turn on the outlets on the outside so kids can plug in their laptop and their battery doesn't die while using the free Wi-Fi. And also, I guess the library board was sunsetted, but I believe Mayor Geary is the representative, if possible, the old library board. I don't know what's going on with that. But you know, I think it would be great if we would have the library board again, but I don't know if that's going to happen. And also thank you for, you know, letting Albany Library, letting my wife, Elaine Videa, be the first Zumba instructor teaching health Zumba classes, dancing in the Edith Stone room. So I just want to say thank you very much for that. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your comment. Sure, there's no one else. I believe that's it. I'll go ahead and bring it back to council. Ben, did you want to address the public comment or anyone?
I would be happy to address the color printing issue particularly. We just in the last few months before we were able to reopen, we were successful in replacing all of our public computing infrastructure and now have color printing available. So those kids can come on down and make color prints for their projects.
Thank you so much. Any other council discussion? I think the question was asked is the amount for a year, 5 years. If someone wants to provide have the assistant city manager provide the public with a breakdown of that amount.
Yeah, the amount is for 1 year.
I was actually wondering if how many staff members or when the library is open, how many staff members does it take to have the library open?
So on the final page of that contract attachment, it does list the FTE for the library, which is 13.95. So it's a few more individuals than that, since many of our employees are part-time. Since we cover more than 5 days a week, we rely in part on some part-time employees, but that's the total staff and complement.
Thanks. And Yep, go ahead.
No, I was going to ask, and how often is staff giving any raise, living wage, merit increase? How does that work? And how would that affect the amount that's being asked?
So our staff at the Albany Library are represented by two different public employee unions. The majority are represented by SEIU 10-1, and the management employees are represented by ACMEA, which is the Alameda County Management Employees Association. So their pay as well as increases are set by contract negotiations. But all of that is visible on the county website. Those cost of living COLAs are pretty healthy for the library staff. So that has been the biggest driver of our expenses increasing over the last few years. I would have to defer to Darshan to tell you how the magic works that we haven't increased the contract amount.
Okay. Vice Mayor, did you have another question? Sorry.
I did not. I was just going to move the item, move the resolution.
Okay.
So I move resolution number 2021-56.
Let me ask a question. I'm sorry about this. So when would, his name is Darshan, is that correct? When will he be able to present us with that information? Are we able to, before we pass this?
What specific information?
Oh. I'm sorry, did he have, so he's missing, right? So is there something he needed to bring, add value to this item? That's my question. And if so, is there something we need to discuss, or is there anything we missed? We're just trying to make sure we've covered all the barriers on this item.
Not being able to speak for the city perspective on this, I've heard him give this presentation many years running into the Albany board.
In lieu of him, okay.
He would go line by line through the expenses on the last page of the contract, but I think we could forego that unless you have questions about it.
Okay, is everyone okay with that? All right. Sorry, Vice Mayor Jordan, go ahead.
Oh, that's okay. I moved the resolution. I think some people jumped into council members to second already.
Seconded.
All right, go ahead and roll call, please, Dan.
Mayor Gary,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Jordan,
Yes.
Councilmember McCoy,
Yes.
Councilmember Nason,
Yes.
Councilmember Tiedemann,
Yes.
and the motion carries.
All right, thank you so much. Thank you, Ben, for coming, and thank you, assistants.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Council.
Let's go ahead to item number A2, which is a status report on the condition of the eucalyptus trees on Albany Hill. We have a staff recommendation for information only. Go ahead, please.
Good evening, council members. I'm Jeff Bond, Community Development Director. I'd like to begin with a brief staff report, and I'll turn it over to my colleague in the Public Works Department, Margot Cunningham, our Natural Areas Coordinator, to help present and to answer your questions. So Albany Hill, as you well know, is the most forested portion of Albany and has many of the characteristics that are common to high fire hazard areas. And it also has a complex pattern of ownership with both developed and undeveloped private property on both sides of both the east and west slopes, as well as city-owned open space. Beginning last fall, city staff began to notice a decline in the health of eucalyptus trees on Albany Hill. And these observations matched what other forestry professionals in the East Bay were seeing in other communities. Several months ago, researchers at UC Berkeley and the U.S. Forest Service, based here in Albany at the USDA building, reached out to the city to get permission to collect samples from several of the trees that were deteriorating. That request was shared with the Parks, Recreation, Open Space Commission at their meeting in April. In May, I believe. And those samples were collected several weeks ago. The results from that research are expected in several months. In addition to the research that's being done, an informal working group of various agencies has been formed in the East Bay. They include the U.S. Forest Service, CAL FIRE, East Bay Regional Park District, as well as representatives of the city, including Fire Department, Public Works Department, and Community Development. That task force will be working together to disseminate the research as it becomes available and think through various best practices and remediation action steps that might be taken as we learn more about what's going on. In addition to the work with the scientific community, the city has retained consulting arborists to do a safety assessment of trees in the areas that are most heavily traveled, make sure that there aren't any immediate hazards that require attention to residents or to passersby. And we'll also be bringing on board as a consultant in the very near future, a wildland management consultant to help do a field assessment of open space on the Hill to understand the field fire hazards, and in the course of doing that, also coordinate with our monarch butterfly biologist to make sure that we're protecting the roosting sites for the monarchs. And before I turn it over to Margot, just want to ensure that we will be working as a kind of a group of departments, be working together to make sure that we consider any potential modifications that we might need to do to our hazard mitigation measures that are already in place and that we've been working on for many years. And as updates become available and conclusions are reached, we will be bringing that to the relevant public bodies, whether it be the council or the Parks and Recreation Open Space Commission and so forth. With that, I think I'll turn it over to Margot. She can tell you a little bit more about the specifics of some of the work that's going on out there. And I think she has some images to share with you as well.
Thanks, Jeff. I'm Margot Cunningham, Natural Areas Coordinator. And I'm going to share my screen. Okay, can you all see this?
Yes.
So I'm sure everyone has noticed, probably in the whole Bay Area, that the trees on Albany Hill have turned brown. And I took these photos one from the BART train and one from the El Cerrito BART station. The eucalyptus, they've been exhibiting signs of decline since last fall. So leaves, branches, and limbs have been dying, and even some entire trees appear to be dead. This is creating an increased risk to the public in terms of both tree failure as well as potential fire risk. This is another view closer up of Albany Hill, the trees, and this is taken from El Cerrito. Now, this is taken at the top of the hill at the Taft turnaround, looking up, and you can see how the trees have really thinned out. They've dropped a lot of leaves. There's a lot of brown leaves on the trees as well, bare branches. This is taken near the summit, looking west, which is about the area where monarchs cluster. And you can see more bare branches, brown leaves. So we've been bringing in experts to help us see what is going on. We want to gather as much information as we can so we can make good decisions. So here we've got Igor Lacan, who is an urban forestry advisor for UC Extension, and he's measuring the soil moisture north of the Taft turnaround. And he found that it was very low. And standing here is Steve Batchelder of the tree consulting firm that we have retained. And he dug a hole in order for Igor to put a probe down in to measure the soil moisture. And then the photo on the right shows Steve taking a core sample from a eucalyptus to measure the tree's starch reserves. And they were also very low. So the trees, they don't have that much energy in them. And as Jeff talked about, we have Mateo Garbalato's lab. They took samples from 4 trees that were cut. Mateo Garbalato is the director of the UC Berkeley Forest Pathology and Mycology Laboratory at UC Berkeley. And his lab has conducted a similar pathogen study on dying acacia in the Bay Area. And Mateo is considered the authority on sudden oak death. So what's happening in this photo, this was the first trunk that was cut. And this took place on May 19th. So this is Doug Schmidt. He's raking away debris in order to get ready to sample the first cut stump. And he's wearing Tyvek because there is poison oak everywhere. Okay, so this is what they found in the first cut trunk. There were dark stains in cross sections of branches, leaves with discoloration and spotting. And this is Doug Schmidt and Tina Popanik labeling samples to take back to the lab. So here we've got the tree cutters getting ready to cut the second trunk near the Taft turnaround. They've got it roped off so that it will fall not on the pathway, but off to the side. And here's what we found in the cut trunk here. There was some rot in the middle. And then here's Doug labeling some samples. And then 2 more trees were cut a little bit north of the Taft turnaround. So there's more sampling going on. And the 4th trunk had significant rot in the middle. So here's where we're at. The tree consultant, they have started surveying trees near roads and trails to evaluate risks to residences, vehicles, and passersby. And a report is expected in about a month. Mateo's lab expects results about pathogens in a month or 2. And as Jeff said, a task force of federal, state, and local agencies is forming to collaborate and share research, resources, and response plans for East Bay agencies. So we want to gather as much information as we can to see what is going on so that we can make decisions about how to manage the trees, which will include removals, especially higher priority trees, which those that have a high likelihood of falling and hitting a target, such as a road or a residence. And we'll take questions at this point.
Thank you for your presentation, Jeff and Margaret. Looks like Councilmember Nason, you have a question?
I do. I have concerns about the timelines here. I remember we were back in January, we were all talking about the drone overflight plan and everything. Would it be possible to get to see a timeline of what is expected when from all these various analyses that are going on? And is there work that is shovel ready, that does not require more analysis, that requires only funding and action?
Well, as I said, we're expecting a report from the tree consultant in about a month. And we're going to be meeting with them actually this Thursday, so we may know more information at that point. The researchers at UC Berkeley, they have to do all their tests, so that will take a month or 2.
That's a no. There's nothing that can be done on a more accelerated basis.
Not at this point. We need to gather all the information we can.
I have a question. Why is it taking so long? I mean, I guess is posing a danger to the residents in that area. We knew about this fire danger. It's not nothing new. It tends to happen for the most part every year. It's drought. We have a drought conditions. The temperatures are going up. I'm just concerned that by waiting a month that, the residents may be in harm's way. So.
Well, like I said, if there are some high priority trees, and we'll know more about this in a week or two, that need to come out right now, we're going to make plans to do that.
So the tree consultant, I'm sorry, when are you meeting? Their report is due in a month, but you're meeting with them in the shorter term.
Yeah, just an initial meeting. They surveyed about 100 trees, and we're going to meet with them and see what their initial findings are.
Is it possible that we would be able to proceed based with some kind of progress based on those initial findings?
Hopefully we will be able to proceed with if there's some high risk trees that they find, yes, we can make plans for that.
Okay. I want to express, well, we've got more questions. I'll wait.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Any other council members have questions before I take it out? Looks like Councilmember McQuaid and then Councilmember Tiedemann. Go ahead, please.
Thank you. I think I shared the concerns I've heard from both the mayor and Councilmember Nason that we need to be really aggressive on this. But just on sort of a side note, have we thought about closing the hill over perhaps the July 4th weekend? I'm hearing fireworks all the time now, and I don't think they're coming from Albany Hill, but we certainly don't want people up there doing fireworks or anything else. And maybe on high fire days, the fire department, puts out the red flag for high risk fire days. Is there any thought of closing off the hill to visitors for those days? I was up there yesterday, and I was thinking on Taft you could put barriers like at the end of the properties, which would help to keep people away from there. I think.
I don't think that's needed, actually, because we've actually done 3 mows on the hill. So the grasses are pretty well under control at this point. And I don't know if blocking off areas on the hill, people are still going to try to come up there. And also the fire department and other people have a lot of eyes on the hill. They're constantly monitoring what's going on and watching for things happening. So I don't think you need to close it.
Before you jump in, Councilmember Tiedemann, I just have a question. Is this city and Albany Hills in particular, are they prepared for a possible disaster to come within the next couple of weeks if we do not have this report and have not taken the necessary measures to deal with these trees?
I think I'd like to respond to that. I believe the city has been as prepared as it possibly can be for this type of a disaster. We only have 6 firefighters on duty at a time, but we do think about this. We have a hazard mitigation plan. We did an evacuation exercise, I guess it was about 1.5 years ago. So we're doing our best with respect to that. I think it's important that the council let the science run its course here a little bit. The professionals who understand these trees as well as anyone in the country are working on this. And they haven't reached any conclusions. They're not recommending that we take immediate action. They're recommending that we let the science run its course. I think we can have some good answers to you on an interim basis, hopefully in the next few weeks or a few months. But it's possible once we understand what this disease is, that the trees will recover. And if that's the case, if we know what that is, and if we know the probability of the trees recovering, the city's response might be something very different than it would be if we learned that the trees are not going to recover. And then I'd also note that this is a sensitive ecological habitat, and it may be subject to environmental review if we were to do something. If we were to decide to waive that environmental review, we would need to have good, solid, factual information in the record in order to support the conclusion not to do a CEQA review. So I realize it's very difficult, but our professional advice to you is give us a little bit of time, give the professionals in the field a little bit of time to develop a program, and then we'll bring that back to you.
You're muted.
Mayor, you're muted.
Sorry, thank you, Jeff. Councilmember Tiedemann, go ahead, please.
If Councilmember Quaid has more questions, I'm happy to let her continue and then I'll jump in.
Sorry, go ahead. I can see that. Go ahead,
Thank you.
Councilmember Quaid.
I was wondering also if we have sent information to residents about hardening and defensible space. I know we've done it in the past, but have we done it recently? And how would we enforce it, or do we enforce it? Or Jeff, I totally respect what you're saying. I think we're really in a crisis here, and while we're letting the science play out, I want to be sure that we're doing everything we can, even if it might be little tiny pieces, but to protect the hill as best we can, to protect the houses. And so, reminding people, and the, the condos on Pierce Street are part of this too. They own some of that land to, what conversations have we had with them about what they need to be doing? And I just want to make sure we're doing today everything that we possibly can. That's not a question, so I'll stop.
Yeah,
but I am really concerned about this.
Okay, I have two things to say on that. The fire department, I believe they do send out information about defensible stays at 30 feet or something like that. But we also are, and Jeff mentioned this, we are working on getting a contract with to do a fuel assessment, and that is in partnership with all of the private open spaces on the hill. So the private spaces behind the condos, we've gotten permission from most of them to include them in this fuel assessment study. And we want to do this because, and we're also going to do another expanded contract on monarch habitat, because we want to make sure when we do these fuel treatments that the fire department is recommending, we want to make sure that it doesn't cause any harm to monarch habitat. We don't want to clear big areas of the hill where monarchs need to cluster or where they need to nectar on plants. And there's also other wildlife to consider in that as well. So my answer is yes, there is some recommendations about defensible space, and then we're working on a broader, more detailed version of that.
I'll just say if the whole hill burns down, it's not going to help the butterflies or the other creatures.
Well, yes, and I understand that.
I know.
But we want to make sure we do it the right way.
Thank you, Margaret. Councilmember Tiedemann.
Yeah, so thank you for the presentation. My first question is just, it was mentioned that, there's a regional, couple groups working on this now, because this die-off is not just a problem on the hill. Can you just repeat or go through what sort of those groups there are and what everyone else is doing on this sort of thing?
I can take a shot at it. Margot can help me if I forget someone, but it's the U.S. Forest Service, CAL FIRE, UC Berkeley's program, the Berkeley program, and then the UC Cooperative program, East Bay Regional Park District, and the group happened to meet initially here in Albany. So Margot, myself, Captain Weitzel, and Acting Chief Boydo also attended that meeting. And there may be other agencies and other professionals that become involved over time. I think it's probably likely to be a growing group of people.
Yeah, there's a lot of interest in this because this is not just happening in Albany. It's other cities as well, Oakland, San Leandro, and actually in the central coast of California, there was a big die-off of or declining eucalyptus in a similar way. And a lot of them actually did recover. And the cities down there, or the agencies, they did some thinning out of eucalyptus so that there was less competition, and a lot of the trees actually did recover.
Mm-hmm. So I'm glad to hear that there's a lot of people working on this. In any of the conversations that y'all have been in so far, has anyone started talking about, larger funding programs or state money to deal with this? As it seems like not an inexpensive idea to get rid of and replace a lot of trees. And if everyone's going to have to be dealing with the same problem, it seems like that might be something to discuss soon.
Yes, definitely. We are looking for grants to help us with this. And one of the attendees at the task force is a grant specialist with the Forest Service. So we're hoping to get some resources from her.
Great. And then just on this impetus that some of the other council members have voiced, which I think is good to keep in mind of, how much of an issue this is. I just want to be clear though, this report is about the die-off. Do we have any idea yet, or do we have to wait for these reports of how much is this new event, which is the die-off, increasing our risk of fire? Because it seemed to me that Albany Hill has always been at high risk of fire. That's not the new thing here, unless this is really vastly increasing our risk.
Well, having dead trees is definitely an increased fire risk, and that's worrisome. So yes, and it's not just happening here. East Bay Parks, they've got a lot of dying eucalyptus and other trees as well. And even native plants, some native plants are being affected, manzanitas on Mount Diablo. So yeah, it is definitely, it's an increased fire risk.
Thank you.
If I may add just to Margot's answer, I think one of the things that we heard from a number of the people in this group was it was the stress of the drought that may be the catalyst for what we're seeing out there. And a good wet winter, we could have a recovery. But again, we need to let the scientists finish their analysis before we should reach any conclusions.
Well, City Manager, can we have the interim fire chief just kind of speak to those concerns regarding some of the residents we have and we brought up?
Go ahead, Jim.
Sorry about that. I've been learning this part of the technology of public meetings now. With the way the hill is, I was a little worried once we first got up there, but listening to the tree experts and walking along quite a few of the trails, it's not as bad as it might seem by just talking about it right now. So a lot of the trees need to be. They talked about approaching things as doing prioritized tree removal, cleaning up the understory, so all of the materials that are dead and down, and collecting those and get rid of those. We've done a lot of work over the last couple of years that goes along with our Albany Hill plan from 2012. So we've been doing the work to help keep the fires from getting catastrophic off of the hill. Our responses with our mutual aid and automatic aid with the cities of Berkeley, El Cerrito, City of Richmond, East Bay Regional Parks, CAL FIRE, and other Alameda County fire agencies have already been planned and talked about during our pre-fire planning process that happened started in April, where we started having these meetings with everybody. And then additionally, we sent out a mailer the second week of May that gave tips on things that we should be cleaning in and around our homes. And this was specific to properties that are adjacent to or near the hill itself. So clearing down leaves, cleaning gutters, cleaning your roof off, picking up limbs that are 3 inches and smaller, trimming away your trees from your house specific distances, and then also trimming them up so that we don't have any types of fires that start in the understory, so the small bushes, and get up into the canopy. That's where we really see the catastrophic fires that don't just hit the hill with the properties next door and then ember cast into the community itself. So that could be a real large problem. But just to echo what Jeff and Margot had said, the scientists that were there, we had a couple gentlemen who were gum tree experts, so eucalyptus experts, and they were actually encouraged with what they saw once they were up on the hill and walking around, that the trees need a couple good rains on them. And he said that they felt that they would perk back up. But the overall health of the hill and the vegetation itself, that part needs to be addressed in a prescribed manner with the experts helping us that take care of forests as a living. So the folks from CAL FIRE and the U.S. Forest Service are going to be a huge help for us to figure out where we have to clear things out and then use that approach.
Councilmember Nason, thank you, Jeff. Councilmember Nason?
Yes, I was a little concerned about the discussion of needing to know more about the monarchs. I thought that we had started dealing with that many months ago, that Stu Weiss was out there with drones and that we were going to get something about the monarchs. I'm a little concerned that the die-off could move faster than the science, and what we might have heard in January could be no longer true today, because this die-off is moving so very quickly. I have to admit, I'm very surprised to hear that the Gumtree folks are optimistic that a couple of good rains could take care of it, because boy, when you walk up there, it is a terrifying sight. Can you tell us about Stu Weiss's work and where that stands?
Stu Weiss has not started work with the drones. That we're hoping to get that started this summer, but we have to go through a process of getting permission from the landowners, and a few of them were averse to having drones, but they've since come around. So, but yeah, that process will take place, and he's going to be studying not just monarchs on city property, but on all the open spaces. So specifically behind Gateview is where a lot of them clustered in the recent past. So we're hoping to get a much more detailed view of the habitat there and the fuels, in relation to fuels.
Okay, that's not good news. But having watched the situation with the East Bay Regional Park District and the University of California over the years, both of which ended up dramatically pulling back on the work that they appeared to consider optimal, and just doing kind of what they considered the most crucial to protect human life as quickly as possible. I lean towards simply, at this point, identifying what needs to be done to protect human life as quickly as possible, and continuing to look at the science. In particular, I'd like to ask Mr. Boydo about the cladding, the wood cladding on the condominiums on the east side of the hill. What is the fire resistance on those areas, since we're that is the prevailing wind direction, even though we're all terrified of the things that happen when the wind is blowing from the east. What is the fire resistance of the shingled buildings on the east side of the hill?
In general, it's poor. Just the wood itself. It can be treated with certain chemicals to help retard any type of burning or ability to burn. I wouldn't doubt they have done that to all of those properties there, or those buildings there on Jackson and such. They keep it very clean underneath, which is a good thing. to help prevent embers and fires from the ground getting into the siding of those buildings. But that is definitely, and I had to look to see exactly what they're using, but in general, cedar sided buildings don't fare well in wildland fire situations.
Thank you.
Vice Mayor Jordan.
Yeah, with the mayor's agreement, I'd like to share the map that was shared with us via the agenda. I can ask some questions, I'll go ahead and do that. I think we've gotten a number of communications from various people, including people who live in one of the three condominium complexes along Pierce regarding the hill and removing vegetation. Some people not in favor of removing vegetation, but I think it's worth conveying that most of the property on the hill, at least on the open space, is actually owned privately. Is there any requirement for private landowners to do any maintenance in terms of reducing fuel loading?
I'll take the first shot at that. I believe there is, but I have not had an opportunity to go back and study the agreements between the development projects in the city. Those would be dating back into the 70s and 80s. And we will, once we come up with a game plan, we would review those agreements to make sure that they're fulfilling their responsibilities.
Yeah, because from going up there, well, a couple of years ago, I had occasion to read the city's plan for its property, which is impressive and comprehensive. And actually going up there, it seems like the city has been pursuing that. And so I very much commend city staff for doing that. It looks very unlikely that a ground fire would crown on the city's property. And once you go off the city's property into the commons property that's owned by the condominium associations, it's a fairly different story. It's particularly dramatic behind Bridgewater. And if the ground fire started there, it's gonna go to the ground for sure. Given what I've seen, and it looks like there's been no maintenance in there at all. So I would actually put that as a higher priority than the science regarding the city's property, because I think the city's been doing a very good job from just going up there and looking around and keeping the fuel loading at the ground down and keeping those ladders that would allow fire to go into the grounds eliminated. It's the private property that's really going to cause catastrophe. And so for the city to find out, what is the agreement? And then if there is some requirement for those associations to maintain their property in a safe condition relative to fire, to start holding them to that agreement. So I think that's a much higher priority.
Well, the thing is, there are monarchs that do cluster on some of those private open spaces. So we want to make sure that that is taken into account in any kind of fuel treatment plans. We don't want complete destruction of understory, and we want to make sure it's done in a scientific way. And that's why we're having the fuel load and the expanded monarch study done to help us to make an informed treatment plan for all the open spaces.
Yeah, and I'm not opposed to that. I guess what I'm getting at is, if an area needs treatment, it's really the private open space. I mean, it's just loaded up to the gills in there. So, I mean, it just seems like it's a much worse situation, a much scarier situation, other than direct strikes from tree falls. But in terms of fire, it looks like a much worse situation on the private property. It was interesting to notice that along Jackson, the eucalyptus trees right along Jackson actually have new growth on them on the west side of the street, perhaps because they're lower down the hill so they can still access moisture. So that was encouraging, at least that those trees that are closest to those residences seem to be still doing okay in terms of falling across the street and hitting a residence. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna take a break and take it out to the public comment. We have a few hands up. And then we'll bring it back to the council for further discussion on this if needed. Go ahead, please.
Well, thanks. My name is Brian Martin. I am a Parks and Rec Commissioner speaking in my personal capacity as a resident of Albany who lives near the base of Albany Hill. I did want to thank the city for doing all of this work to try to figure this out and reaching out to all these different groups to try to figure this out. I do want to stress that, as some have said, that although their eucalyptus is in our vegetation plan already to remove it as the trees fail over many years, that this would be a potentially much more accelerated thing. That it sounds like some city council members are very aware that the timeline may need to be very different from the typical gradual removal of eucalyptus, if that's what needs to be done. I had questions about what has been done to reach out to owners and condo associations to the west, because a month ago at the Parks and Rec Commission, we actually asked the staff to figure out, we said this is a pressing need to figure out what are the agreements that stand between the city and the owners for that private open space behind the condos. And it sounds like that hasn't been done yet. So I'm very concerned that that hasn't been done. And it sounds like it's going to maybe hard to figure out. And that's what we were told, but we said that was a high priority. And so I'm hoping that that can be figured out as soon as possible. I think also it'd be good to speak at condo association meetings to have the city tell the residents, there's hundreds, if not thousands of people in each of those. And because they're maybe the ones that need to make some of these decisions. I don't know how ownership really works in condos. And if trees need to be removed, is that something that they have to pay for? I guess those agreements are going to have to be figured out. And then for the monarchs, if their trees are identified as being dead and dying, as they look like the ones that I think are monarch roosting trees, they look just as bad as all the other ones. So I think very difficult decisions may be in store that people should be aware of. Thank you.
Thank you for your time. Next, please.
Hi, good evening.
Sorry.
That's okay.
Hi, this is Jeremiah. Has anybody consulted the native Indians, the Ohlonies, the Sigorte about this? I mean, maybe there's a natural remedy, something for this kind of thing. I think it would be great to talk to the native Indians. They might have some really good resources for forest management. I mean, they've been doing this for thousands and thousands of years. And it comes down to forest management. I don't know who picks up the branches on the ground or who rakes the leaves, but there's a lot of branches and leaves to rake, which poses a huge fire risk. And I'm up here right now on Albany Hill, and this is a beautiful area. And if we could do this right, we can make this a wonderful place. I know East Bay Regional Park. I've been to Ardenwood, and they have beautiful monarch area and whole train that goes through, and it's a whole tour and it's guided. Monarchs, I'm not sure if they're an endangered species or if this is a wildlife protected area. Let's say you have monarchs on private property. Well, let's say they just want to cut down the tree, regardless of the monarch butterflies or not. It's their property. They could do what they want. I don't know. Maybe we can have some policies implemented for wildlife protection. I've been around Albany Hill many times, and I've never seen these lines on the ground. This map that Mr. Vice Mayor presented. Maybe we can draw some property lines up there, because we don't know where private property meets public property, or so maybe we can draw some property lines. I don't know what's going on up there. I don't know whose land I'm on when I'm walking. And how many fire hydrants are up there. I noticed one up there. That's about it. So, this study that you're going to do for the fuel abatement study assessment, of course it's obvious. It's going to be high risk. There's a lot of dead wood, so I don't think you need to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars to do a common sense answer. But keep up the good work, and thank you very much. And also the birds. There's birds nesting in the trees, so you got to do a bird nest study. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Next, please.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. This is Nick Pilch, Albany resident. I think Vice Mayor Jordan's comments are very relevant here. The city has had a program for quite some time, and it's been doing the work of cleaning up the city's area to prevent the to mitigate fire danger, but have the private property owners done that? That needs to be investigated. I would ask that the council not make assumptions about what's happening here. I feel like assumptions are being made that because there is browning of the trees, we are automatically, there is double or triple the fire danger and all these trees are going to die. I feel like I hear that assumption being made, and what I hear from the consultants, or rather the experts, is that the trees could recover. And what I haven't heard is how many have died from this, or how many are dying from this. I don't think there are. I haven't heard that there are any. So I would not jump to conclusions. I think staff seems to be on top of this. Finally, if it weren't for the monarchs, there's no love lost between myself and eucalyptus. Eucalyptus are an introduced tree that destroys almost all native habitat beneath them. It would be great if they were all gone and we had the native habitat restored, but for the monarchs. Unfortunately, the monarchs have made them a nesting area as well. But we can consider, rather than, and the monarchs are under stress as well, we can consider other plantings that would attract monarchs rather than the eucalyptus. But thank you for listening.
Thank you for your comment. Go ahead.
Yes, hi. I'm just curious, with the Albany Cross, which I assume operates on electricity, has that been looked into in terms of the safety of it in heavy wind, sparking, a short circuit, something creating a fire that could create a fire? I'm just curious to know. Thank you.
Thank you. I believe that's it.
That's it.
Right. I'll go ahead and bring it back to council for further discussion. Any other comments or concerns, questions?
I'll just offer, Mayor, that somebody raised their hand late.
Okay, go ahead and let him in, and then Councilmember McQuaid, I saw you.
Yeah, hi. I'm at Gate View, and I'm wondering, Margot Cunningham, that she came over and checked our trees back there. So I want to know, I came to this meeting late, so I want to know the conditions of the trees that are in our property and how, are they in the same condition as the rest of the hills? And if we are asked, if they're at high risk, will we be asked to remove them? And is it solely at our cost, or will the city be assisting? Because this is not totally unbudgeted right now. We don't have it in our reserves, and it's a very big expenditures. And the other question is, if you remove the eucalyptus trees in the city's property, are there any, do you have any thinking about the replacement of those trees? You don't just wipe out a whole bunch of trees and not replant the hill. And also, Steve is on the way. He has some questions as well.
Yes, my name is Steve Holgren. I'm another resident.
Can you hear him?
No, we can't hear him.
You have to, yeah, but they can't.
decades of the hill from my
Can you
unit. The trees are dying from the top down. And my question would be, I guess, it doesn't seem feasible to trim them from the top. So if we have to thin our property out, I guess this would be to the ground level for all of the trees that are removed. Like Janet, there's a huge cost for us. It's not budgeted. And I hope there might be some sort of subsidy or grant to aid in the removal of the trees and replacement with something else. With regard to monarch butterflies, during the time I've lived there, I haven't seen many of them in the eucalyptus trees on that property, but I have seen them cluster on some of our foliage that's right on our property border. Unfortunately, a lot of that was removed last year in a landscaping project, and I'm not aware that the city made any effort.
So Janet, will you have Steve, I believe that's his name, will you have him email the council after the meeting or during the meeting, and then we can address his questions and concerns? That would probably be the best way to do this, okay?
Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much. I'll bring it back. Margaret, did you want to answer Jan's question before I give it over to Councilmember McQuaid for a question?
Sure. So we are, as part of the fuel load and the fuel load assessment and Stu's more advanced monarch study, we are going to be looking at all of the properties. As I said before, I have not done any assessment. No one has done any assessment over there from the, no city staff has, it's private property. And the other thing is, once we get these studies done, there is a possibility of getting grants in between both for the city and for private properties. So that is a possibility that we will be researching. And in terms of replacement for eucalyptus, that's not going to happen except in areas, possibly areas where the monarchs are clustering. We may have to do some planting of eucalyptus or possibly some other kind of tree. That's something that we need to research. But in other areas on city property, at least, the Albany Hill plan, as Brian Martin talked about before, is to allow the eucalyptus to gradually disappear. And the native plants, there's about 150 different kinds of native plants growing on Albany Hill, so they will definitely repopulate the hill.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember McQuaid, I believe you had your hand up.
Yes, thank you. You know, I think Vice Mayor Jordan did make a really good point. And I'm thinking we kind of need to take two parallel paths here to end up in the same place. One being certainly doing the scientific studies. I don't want to stop that in any way. I think that's really important. I think Interim Chief Boito made me feel a little better that the people that really know things aren't quite as concerned as we are, or at least as I am. But I would like to see us start to look at regardless of what the study says, we do need to start thinning out these trees and managing all of this fuel load. So I'd like to see us looking at our contracts or agreements or whatever they are with the private property owners. What I don't want to have happen is in a month or 2 months or whatever, we suddenly get a report that says, we're in real trouble, we need to get all those trees down. And we're like, okay, now we're going to start to do some of this work that I think we need to be doing now. So that we're ready to leap into action at a relatively quick time if we need to. And it certainly won't hurt us to do some of this research. Because like I say, I think some of these areas do need to get thinned out and cleaned out and all of that, regardless of what we discover at this particular time.
As I said before, Mayor McQuaid, we will be doing work in stages. So the highest priority trees, we will identify ones that threaten residences, other high targets. And then we'll go from there as we learn more from our tree consultant and from the other studies, how to proceed after that.
Thank you. Thank you, Margot. Vice Mayor Jordan, I believe you have your hand up.
Yeah, thank you. One of the attendees commented that the surveys are costing hundreds of thousands of dollars. I thought it would be useful for staff to provide not to the dollar, but some sense of how much the surveys are costing the city. And an attendee also observed that there's one fire hydrant there, so I was hoping that the interim fire chief could maybe come back online and discuss the fire suppression systems up there. I believe, it looks like there's a lot of new systems that were put in place up there as a part of the work that was done.
Fire Chief Jim.
Sure, Vice Mayor. We were in the process of putting in what we call a dry hydrant that goes up to the plateau. We're waiting for East Bay Mud to install a hydrant up at the turnaround next to that dry hydrant. Otherwise, there's a green top, over 1,000 gallons a minute hydrant that's up at the top. It's got good pressure. We also have hydrants towards the end of Gateview and Hillside as well that we can access. But we have, I think, a much improved water supply system now than we did even 3 years ago. So once that other hydrant gets done on the very top, it's going to make it a lot easier for us to protect and put things out as they get to the top of the hill.
Thank you. Yeah, that's again my sense, and I commend staff. Obviously, been very proactive and reaping the benefits of that now. And so then maybe to Margot, if I can be so familiar since we've known each other for decades, maybe you can speak to the survey cost, just kind of order of magnitude, or approximately.
The cost for the tree assessment, it's a 3-year contract, $9,200. The fuel assessment is will be about $15,000, and the expanded monarch habitat survey using drones will be about $20,000.
Is that $9,200 a year for the 3-year contract, or $9,200 total?
3 years.
Wow.
That's over 3 years.
Kind of a deal. So thank you. Yes, sounds like money quite well spent.
Thank you, Vice Mayor Jordan. Councilmember Nason.
Yeah, this is probably very much along the lines of what Councilmember McQuaid was saying. That I think in the very shortest run, if there are things that we can do, actions that we can take that could be implemented or at least planned, and we can start looking for funding ahead of the whole package that needs to be done. I hope that staff will be looking for opportunities to reduce risk in the immediate, in the short run. In the longer run, and I am a little concerned as I hear the various work that still that sounds like it's still staff work in addition to the scientific work, such as the research on the relationship between the city and the private owners. It's a little concerning to hear Ms. Lynn talking about their lack of knowledge or funding. And I agree with Vice Mayor Jordan, by the way, that the city has done over time a really nice job on improving the situation on its land. Although I also have to say that, in the more recent walkthroughs, I am not at all confident that fire would not crown because of what is coming down from the trees in their current condition. It looks as though crowning is a very real risk on the city property as well. Although I also, of course, the private property is nowhere near as well maintained, and it's so steep that it must be extraordinarily difficult to do things on those properties. But that would be my encouragement, and I hope staff would look for immediate safety, any immediate measures that can be taken to improve safety, including making sure that the cedar sided condos are prepared as best they can be for fire. But also in terms of staffing, it seems as though we need someone to research the relationship and the options available for working with the private owners and to work with the private owners. You know, someone needs to come to meetings with them. Someone needs to work with CAL FIRE, et cetera. That's a lot of work. In addition to coordinating all of this scientific work and then being on top of the grant possibilities, working with the other agencies and actually identifying and writing grants for the various source of funding. Even ahead of actually having any work done, it looks to me like there's a whole lot of work that the staff needs done, and I'm wondering if we have the capacity to do it. I mean, can this be are there things that can be set aside so that this can be done by staff, or do we need additional help? Do we need consultants? Do we need contractors? What do we need to make sure that we're moving as quickly as we can, given the constraints of the scientific and CEQA limitations?
Oh, I'll speak to that. This is my job, so I am committed to this. All the research that we learn, we plan to share with the condo owners on the West Slope and other people as well along Jackson to help them with their fire management treatments. As far as grants, we do have a grant consultant who will be helping us to look for grants. That is happening. And I am looking for grants, and other staff is as well. So I can handle it.
Okay, and the work on the public-private partnership needs. It sounds like Jeff Bond, you're thinking of that as something you would do yourself. Do you need help? Do you need the assistance from perhaps from City Attorney Subramanian's firm or anyone else to try to figure out what needs to be done in terms of creating a partnership that will be effective?
Well, we work closely with BBK on a regular basis, so we certainly coordinate with them and with the city manager if we need additional resources. In terms of finding the agreements, that's just a couple hours searching through some old files. They're not very well organized, so it just takes a little bit of time, but that's something we do every day. So at this point, I don't feel like the council needs to allocate funds or anything like that. If we feel like we get to the point where we need a substantial amount of outside assistance, then we absolutely will come back to you with a professional services contract. As you know, we often bring in outside experts on larger tasks, but I don't think we're quite there yet, but we might be. And trust me, I wouldn't hesitate to bring in the best possible help that we can get if and when we need it. But I feel like I'm not prepared to make that recommendation to you this evening until we have a little bit more time to do some of this basic research.
Okay, that all sounds good. Could I request this of the city manager, just to be sure that this remains top of mind for everyone and doesn't kind of slide away in the and I'm talking about us, the council, not about the staff. I know how committed you guys are, but just to keep this in front of us, could you incorporate this regularly into each city manager report? What has been accomplished since the last meeting on this particular issue? And if it's nothing, that's okay. Sometimes 2 weeks might go by and there's really nothing to report, but I'd like to hear a report in each of your city manager reports, if that's something you could do.
I'd be happy to do that, and I intended to do that already. I want to appreciate our staff for putting this report together so quickly, basically overnight at my request. So I thank you for doing that. We thought it was critical enough to come to the council level, and that's why you received the information tonight. Again, this is an informational item at this point, and we will absolutely be returning with updates.
Thank you so much, City Manager. Thank you, Councilmember Nason, Staff Member Jeff Bond, and Margo. Thank you for your time and presenting this information to us. We look forward to hearing from you within a month or so. Moving right along, we're going to do item number 9.1. This is public hearing for the biannual budget. I will hear staff report.
Thank you, Mayor. I will introduce the item and turn it over to our Finance Director, Heather Rowden. I wanted to acknowledge the work that's gone into the product before you. It is different than years past. It is much bigger. I'm sure you noticed that right away. The purpose of packaging it together is hopefully over time for it to be a resource and a reference tool for the community and the members of the council and staff for transparency and to find everything financial in one document. The reason we have it as a public hearing this evening is because there are a handful of the fee changes and resolutions associated and incorporated herein necessitate that public hearing. So again, what you see before you is both the budget and some action items related to what you have within the budget dictating the numbers as we move forward. So Heather, I wanted to take the time to recognize all the work that you've put in to your department and to maintaining the fiduciary responsibilities of the city.
Thank you. Yeah, as Nicole said, this is a lot more than you normally get all at once. It's a continuation of the conversation that was started on May 17th. And the operating budget, the general fund portion of the operating budget was presented to you on May 17th. And then this adds in the special revenue funds and kind of explains a little bit in more detail how the operating budget works with those special revenue funds. In previous years, a number of the resolutions that are coming to you in this package have come separately. However, I think it's really important to have them all together so that you can see how they work together. The first resolution is the adoption of the 2-year budget. The second resolution is adoption of the appropriations limit. That is the first public hearing that's required. That's something that's required at the state level. We do this every year. It's audited every year. And so it's something that is fairly routine and standard. The third resolution is the update to the master fee schedule. There aren't many fee changes that are being proposed this year. In fact, it's only the removal of one of them and then updating of some wording. And then the fourth resolution is the updated salary schedule that would go into effect if the budget is adopted, with the addition of a handful of positions and some adjustments to other positions. The fifth resolution is adopting the tax rate for the pension override tax. This also comes every year. Historically, it's come at a different time than the budget, but it really does affect the budget because we have a transfer in to cover certain pension costs. And then the last resolution in the package is the resolution confirming the maximum and applied tax rates for each of the parcel taxes. I say maximum and applied because in certain cases, the tax rate that we assess does not equal the maximum tax rate. The library fund is the one that is different. We've had a fund balance in the library fund for a while, And even though the costs tend to exceed the tax collected, the balance in that fund has been able to sustain it. And especially now that, you guys just have that presentation with this past year and us only being charged half of the contract for quite some time, that fund has grown. I don't suggest any change to the tax rate because, again, we do spend more than we bring in every year. So we're continuing to lower it. It just allows us to hold off any potential increase in the future if necessary. So those are the resolutions that are included in this package, and they're spread out throughout a number of different sections. And I thought I would just go over each section included in the report. So section 1 is the introduction. It includes the staff report that talks about things that staff feels that council should, make decisions on, or information to help you make those decisions, things like that. The appropriations limit is in there. Policies that have been passed previously, the fund balance policy and the reserve fund policy. And then the master fee schedule is in section 1 as well. Section 2 is staffing. There's an org chart. There's the summary of the positions that we have historically had over the past 5 years and the ones that are being proposed in the coming budget. Section 3 is the biennial operating budget. It's what you saw on May 17th, in addition to the changes made based on the sugar sweetened beverage tax talk. And then section 4 is a discussion on all the special revenue funds and the enterprise fund, the sewer fund, and we will be changing the storm drain fund to an enterprise fund as well. We have a section on debt service. There is a line on the property tax bill that changes year to year based on debt service, but that's not something that the council sets. It's something that was approved when the voters approved the bond. So section 5, debt service, talks about that. Section 6 is something new to the budget process, and it's just for information purposes on the closed police and fire pension fund. There's a requirement in the charter that we provide a list of beneficiaries and the listing of what they received. So that's included, and then a discussion on the fund itself. And then section 7 is an inclusion of future funding needs. Again, this is for information purposes only. The first item in section 7 is future pension costs. And then the second section is asset replacement. It's set up based on the reserve funds that were established by council policy, and it doesn't detail, but it summarizes some of the larger items that we know will need to be replaced in the next 5 years to give you an idea of how much money the city is going to need to spend to keep up on asset replacement. One thing I forgot to mention is I did try to include, there were a couple of requests to include how the CIP budget interacts with this. And so we added a line in section 4 under special revenue funds to show how the appropriations that were made in the CIP budget affect those fund balances as well. And so I think that's it for me.
All right. Thank you, Heather. Thank you for presenting that. We're going to start one at a time. We'll start with number 1 with the first resolution, and I'll open it up for discussion from the City Council. No one has any? Vice Mayor Jordan, go ahead. And then Councilmember McCoy.
Yeah, I just want to thank you for putting this together. It's an amazing resource. I feel like I'm finally starting to understand things. as a new council member, and having this textbook to go through is a big part of that. So I appreciate that. I thought maybe since it was a topic that came up in a previous meeting, and I believe there was a late breaking attachment to the agenda about the sugar sweetened beverage tax, that would be worth a few words about that. How that's accounted, so on and so forth.
Sure, I can touch on that. So the sugar sweetened beverage tax was passed as a general fund tax. Staff has not changed how they address those funds since inception. We've just changed how it's been presented. I had the feeling that there was a disconnect between how people thought the funds were being treated and how they are actually treated. And I suggested that we change how we present them to make that clear. We account for them like we account for everything. We have line items, we track it, the revenue is tracked in one account, and we have a special project number for the expenses. So at any time, we can provide everything that's been collected and everything that goes out. So we were able to provide, because it's been requested, the same type of table that was provided in previous years that shows at the bottom the difference between the revenue and the expenses related to this program. I still want to make it clear that unless there is specific action by council, this is part of the general fund balance. And staff have not made any changes. We've always treated it like this. It's just in the change in how we present it to make that clear.
All right, Councilmember McQuaid.
Thank you. I wanted, since this resolution addresses passing the budget, I kind of wanted to talk a little bit about sugar sweetened beverages. It was my understanding at the last council meeting, or the one we discussed this, that council directed staff to prioritize the programs, which is language out of the minutes. So I'm a little bit confused by the language that says this was what was approved. That wasn't my understanding at the time. And so I'd like to take a little bit of time to come to consensus. Is this actually what we're approving, or is there an opportunity to discuss it further?
I'll be happy to jump in there. Yeah, approved is likely not the most effective word to use there. I certainly recall at the last meeting, the study session, the direction was to return to the council with a list of the items as council had identified interest in funding with that funding source. And so that is the table that you see included in your staff report. Your action would be, as part of your adoption of the budget, affirming that list or making any variations thereof. I hope that helps explain.
Right, that was my understanding also. So Mayor, is this the time to have that discussion, or what's your preference?
I do, but I want Councilmember Nason to jump in, and then we can have that discussion, let her present hers, and then we can have it. Go ahead, Councilmember Nason.
Yeah, as approving this budget, we're approving, I take it, the restructuring, the proposed restructuring, and I'm not sure that I entirely understand it, that the replacement of the assistant to the city manager and the replacement of the treasurer, and will how with a new assistant city clerk, and with the and I also don't quite understand the moving of the I was glad to see neighborhood services moved back to its fellows in recreation, but I'm a little bit concerned about the movement of economic development out of community development and into the city manager's office. So I'd like to get more information about the new staff structure from the city manager. And I'd also like to get from the finance director an understanding when we're looking at the numbers. I can't tell which numbers need to be compared to which other numbers. In what year, what were different changes made? So when we're looking, and I'm assuming, for example, we're greatly increasing the amount of funding for general government. I assume that is at least in part due to the restructuring, but I can't tell. So I'd like to hear more about that, both the restructuring from the city manager and the impacts on the budget from the finance director. Thank you.
Okay. Councilmember Tiedemann, do you have any questions you'd like to address? And Vice Mayor Jordan. Okay, so we're going to go back to Councilmember McQuaid.
Okay.
Councilmember Nason's after. Go ahead.
Okay. So I would like to have a little bit more information about the gardening talks. I think they're wonderful. I'm not quite sure how they relate, however, to sugar sweetened beverage. And I mean, I understand if you're working out in your garden, you're being healthy, but I'm not quite seeing the tie there. I'd be interested in what the nexus is between sugar sweetened beverage and the garden talks. I also have some concerns about the, where is it on here? The education campaign for $10,000. One of the things they talk about is doing some kind of a mailer, which I think, just roughly probably costs about $7,000 maybe. It seems like that's a number I've heard before. That seems like an awful lot of money to send paper to all of the residents of Albany. I'm just thinking that could be used, I think, in a probably a more useful way. And I mentioned it the last time and, didn't get any traction, and that's fine. But I'd still like to see us put some money into behavioral health services. We hear that a lot. I think there is a nexus of health to sugar sweetened beverages. And I think behavioral health, mental health, physical health, they are all tied together. So I'd be interested in thinking a little bit about that. And I think that's it for me for this part.
If I may go ahead, Mayor?
Ed, I'm sorry, I didn't see your hand. Go ahead.
That's okay. Yes, on the education campaign, perhaps a proposed way to look at that as a placeholder. I was tasked with doing research on what is known in the academic literature regarding what makes for an effective education campaign. I have started that work. I haven't completed it. So I would suggest either it's reasonable to deprogram that for now, but it might be best to leave it as a placeholder without actually making a decision on how that money would be spent at this point until I can complete that particular work. More broadly, I was pretty surprised to see how much has been, how much of the revenue that's been generated over time has been spent on the programmed items chosen by previous councils relative to what hasn't been spent. And I'm surprised because my sense was that the council had pretty much every year programmed 100% of the anticipated revenue except for last year. So again, it was quite a surprise to see that. I don't have a particular judgment on that, but I'd be interested to hear from those who've been here longer than I have, if they were aware that the programming was that much less than the revenue year over year. And if there was some thinking behind that, because as a member of the public at that time, I didn't pick up on that. I am inclined to have a reserve fund set up for the SSB revenue and for the 1/3 of the UUT increase in revenue, measure DD, so that can be tracked more assiduously against what it is spent on, to be able to demonstrate to the voters more transparently, that this is what you passed, this is how it's being spent, this is the part that is getting moved over to the general fund per se. I mean, it's all general fund, but the part that's just sort of going to fund general government activities, and these are the parts that have really been programmed specifically. I think we need that. I'm not suggesting doing that retrospectively, but doing that from this point forward. So I'd be interested in other council members' thoughts on setting up those two reserves.
Councilmember Nason?
Yeah, in terms of setting up reserves, I think there's several different issues that get tangled up here. And one is what we do in the accounting system and what gets audited. There can be rules about creating special revenue funds. If the money is in fact general fund money, it might need to be reported in the audited financial statements as part of the general fund. But we also have an ordinance that was part of what people voted for, and I at least think we've got to comply with it, about reporting to the taxpayers about what happens with this money. So it needs to be, to my mind, it needs to be tracked, it needs to be reported. The technicalities of how it is tracked, I think, is probably something that our finance director and our auditor could work out between them. But I think it's for the council to look at the ordinance on reporting and satisfy ourselves that we are, in fact, doing what we promised to do when we put it on the ballot.
Vice Mayor Jordan? You're on mute.
Thank you. Being very new to all this, my understanding of the reserve funds is that they are part of the general fund. So it's really an accounting mechanism. Any money from any of the reserve funds could be moved really between reserve funds, could be moved into expenditures on general government expenditures any year. So from my very thin understanding, it seems like that would be the appropriate mechanism. And I think if the council chose to have those reserve funds set up, then it would no longer really need to track year by year that there is reporting on that, because it would just be built in. Just the way all the other reserve funds are reported out in our budget textbook now. It would just be another couple pages that would be in there, so that transparency would just become systematized.
I'm fine with that if that's what our auditor agrees. However, I'm not okay with not doing the retrospective, doing the full report on how the money has been spent since the beginning of the program, because we just haven't done that. In my opinion, we have not met the requirements of the ordinance that was passed.
So have the numbers that we received this afternoon based on this PDF, have those been tracked? Okay, so I think our request was to have that information outside of the numbers. Is that what I'm hearing?
I'm sorry, say that again.
Yeah.
So I guess my question is, when you're saying retrospect, are you saying that these numbers haven't been tracked? But I'm hearing, yes, they have, but we just don't have the information before us. Is that?
Yeah, I think they've been tracked, but I think they have not been reported, except in the the biggest picture, bottom line numbers. We can't say how much has been spent, what the money was spent on.
So we need itemization. That's what you're saying, the itemization of the money. Do we have that?
I'm sure we do, but we haven't received it as a report. Is that right, Heather?
Yeah, the only way I got the total was to sum all of the itemized stuff. But so I have it and I can provide it. That's not something that's normally done as part of any audit or review. We easily can provide it.
And it is required by the ordinance. That's the problem. And we need to kind of get into line with what we said we'd do.
Well, staff have talked to both the auditor and the city attorney and are under the impression that we have provided everything that we have been required to. If council would like additional information, we can provide that.
Let me read the ordinance. Why don't you go on and I'll read it so we're sure that everybody knows what the ordinance says.
All right, Vice Mayor Jordan, did you have a question?
Yeah, in the proposal to set up a reserve fund, my concept was that it would appear the way the other reserve funds appear, and there might be two line items. One is council directed specific funding towards public health improvement and SSB consumption reduction, and the other line would be transfer out to I don't know how it's all general fund, so I'm not quite sure the right term. And if people really want to know the details, then they can go into the agendas and figure out, what did the council actually direct the expenditures of each year, because there's a lot of documentation of that. So I think to have that level of documentation have to be presented every year in a separate report would be way beyond what happens with any other fund.
Thank you, Councilmember Nason. Go ahead.
Yeah, I don't agree with that. And the problem, and I think you actually pointed it out, it's very much like what happens with the CIP. Every year we program a bunch of things a bunch of programs to be funded, and only maybe half of them actually get done. And the next year we program them again, and again only a certain percentage of them get done. And that happens with the sugar sweetened beverage tax as well. So I think that we really need to, because it was adopted by initiative, and initiative with specific language, which I'll try to pull up. I think it's incumbent on us to provide that detail and not expect that not leave it to the taxpayers to dig through past agendas like I did for the email that I sent around. I don't think that that's what anyone would have envisioned when they voted for this and read the reporting provision.
I guess I don't want to be in the position that staff has to be reporting on $10,000 items out of what is a $24 million budget. That just doesn't seem like a great use of time. So that's what I'm sort of suggesting. I mean, maybe what could be in the reserve fund is in the presented in the budget document for the reserve fund is kind of those two line items for where the funding went to what it went to that year, and there could be just replication of the table of here's what the city council directed spending on in its study session or something. But I think getting to the level of detail of tens of thousands of dollars it's just not an efficient use of time.
Well, although if people came and spoke and said, I want to see this program done, and it was a little tiny program, and we do that with the sugar sweetened beverage tax, we look at little tiny programs, then I think they should be told what, if it was approved by the council, then the report should tell them whether it was actually done or not, even if it's small.
Councilmember McQuaid and then Councilmember Nason when you're ready to read the ordinance. Go ahead, Councilmember McQuaid.
Thank you. I was wondering if, since all of these expenses are coded, if when we get the proposals, like in the spring, when we do our workshop on sugar sweetened beverage, and we get sort of like, this is what you approved last year, could we just get it as part of that report? Would that satisfy the needs of, I mean, for one thing, it would be easy for the public to see that. It wouldn't have to, look at a budget, which is daunting to some people. And it would be kind of narrative text, I see you, Preston. We budgeted $160. Well, that would be nice. $160,000 for crossing guards. We actually spent $159.32. Okay, it's kind of line item. Heather, would that work for you easily? The way you have it coded now, would that work?
Let me jump in first, Heather, and share the response with me. As part of the study session process for the sugar sweetened beverage tax, we do provide a report on what the council directed over the course of that past fiscal year. And I think that we could, it would be straightforward enough, I wanted to say easily, but straightforward enough to provide a more robust report in terms of expenditures for that given year. And that would be part of your study session, so you understand the beginning balance and the ending balance, so to speak, as well as success or failure in implementing the programs as directed by the council. I think that answers some of the question. I also wanted to ask our city attorney to speak a bit to the ordinance language with regard to audit. You will find that if you review a number of our more recent tax measures, this language with regard to audit is standardized across those ordinances as adopted by the voters. So the policy direction on top of the voter approved ordinance would be something that I would need to defer to Mala in terms of interpreting what is allowable under what has been written and approved by the voters. Our operational approach to date has been, if it's incorporated into the general fund, it's audited with the general fund.
Councilmember Nason, go ahead.
Yeah, here's the language. By no later than December 31st of each year after the operative date, the city's independent auditors shall complete a report reviewing the collection, management, and expenditure of revenue from the tax levied by this section. And I just, to me, that just creates a vision that people will hear what the money was spent on, how much was spent, what it was spent on.
And if I could just jump in, Mayor Gary, we did review the section that Councilmember Nason just quoted from, and we don't think that requirement requires an individualized or standalone report. We think it can be included as part of the budget as long as it's reported on in order to meet the requirements of the ordinance.
Part of the audit, not part of the budget, right?
It just says it shall complete a report, right? By that date, the independent auditor shall complete a report reviewing the collection, management, and expenditure of revenue from the tax.
Yeah, but you said it as part of the budget, and I thought you meant.
I think you're right. I mean, as part of the audit.
Yeah.
Right.
Thank you.
It doesn't have to be a standalone audit of the taxes, is what I meant in terms of it.
I agree, but it does have to be a report.
Councilmember McQuaid.
So if we did it in the spring, and we did it as a part of the study session, that would meet the language, the intent, everything of the ordinance. Is that correct, Mala?
Well, it's by no later than, so when you say by spring of it's no later than December 31st of each year is when it needs to be done. So.
But then it will be put in the packet for the spring work session.
I'm sorry, Rachel. I didn't hear you. What?
I'm sorry. Well, it could just be put, if it's done by December 31st, and then the report, that piece of the audit that relates to sugar sweetened beverage tax could just be put into the packet for the annual study session in the spring.
That's correct, as long as it's completed by December 31st.
Yeah.
Vice Mayor Jordan.
Thank you. Yeah, so I suggest that maybe there's two frames through which this is being viewed. One is the legal frame, and that is satisfied by the auditing, but it's supposed to be completed by December 31st. And there's the political frame, which I think is more the frame of providing that detail of specifically what were these funds spent on to the line item. And to meet that, I think just doing the work and providing that as part of the spring report would meet that. So I don't necessarily think separating those two goals out so that they each happen on their own track when their timing comes up would be a useful way to go. And I appreciate the city manager's offer of a solution there for sort of the political perspective. And I agree that if I'm a voter, which I am, and I read that, then I'm sort of thinking, okay, there's going to be some specific report to that item, even though what we're hearing from the city attorneys is not legally required, that the general audit meets the legal requirement. So that would be my suggestion. You know, we just let the auditing go forward the way it's been going forward, but we take the city manager's suggestion to have that sort of level of detail come forward in the spring report. With that suggestion, I'm still interested in in setting up reserve funds for the 1/3 of the UUT measure from last November and for the SSB, because I think that will increase transparency within the budget documents. I mean, it will really record when the council did, you know, the amount of funding the council didn't direct, and that just went into the general funds, you know, general purpose spending.
So Vice Mayor Jordan, I guess my question is to you, and correct me if I'm wrong, you're stating that the report that was due this past December 31st, 2020, we should forego that and then moving forward, or we should be receiving?
No. So yes, what I'm saying is that my understanding is that report, which is the audit for the prior fiscal year, which ended June 30th, that audit meets the legal requirement of the language that is in the ordinance. But I think the perception is it doesn't meet sort of the political requirement of what's in the ordinance, what a voter would understand when they read that language. And so that part of it would be satisfied by what the city manager suggests, which is that this spring report that comes out ahead of and to support the study session that actually reports on the last year of spending, maybe have a bit more specificity to it on what was achieved, what wasn't achieved. And so you wouldn't try to put that into the official audit because that makes the official audit more involved than it needs to be. That we can handle that more informally at a policy level by saying the council expects to have that information come forward in the report for each study session. And I think that would be a more appropriate time for it to come to us, because that's the time when the council will be thinking about it and can actually use that historical information to make decisions about what to do with the next year.
I don't feel strongly about it one way or the other, as long as we're getting the reports. If it's easier for the staff to do 2 reports, that's fine. If it's easier to do it as one report and the auditor is willing to incorporate it in the audit, that's fine. You know, whatever works. The important thing is that the information is made available.
So on the reserve funds ideas, I'm not I'm not hearing a lot of love for that concept.
Why don't we leave Heather come back to us with a reporting plan, and she and our finance director and our city manager to talk about how best to handle it. I don't think we need to give
okay
direction tonight.
And I would just say should apply to both of them.
Any other questions? Well, we're still on resolution number 1. Is there any other concerns before we take a roll call on that? Councilmember Nason?
Well, resolution number 1 is adopting, the budget. I clicked away to look at the annual.
Correct. The special revenue.
Yeah, and so the main thing that we're doing is we're authorizing, I think that the main change in our programming that we're authorizing by adopting the budget is adding we're approving the restructuring. At least we're providing funding that will permit the city manager to go forward with advertising and implementing the restructuring. I'd like to hear a little bit more about how that all will work.
Go ahead, please, city manager.
Sure. The overall change to the budget is $35,000 for that restructuring, as it's been titled. What it does is provide additional support citywide, and economic development has been shared within the roof of City Hall across departments between community development and city manager's office for many, many years. In the past, the assistant city manager, Judy Lieberman, was the economic development staff person, among many other things. So it has bounced from office to office. The interest in bringing it back to the city manager's office is to add heightened priority to the need to ensure economic stability over time and to really focus on the revitalization of our downtown and our business sectors in general. That is a position that, again, will work across departments. So when it's under the administration department, that is really the operational approach to a lot of those positions. The deputy city clerk is intended to provide much more support to the vast need to support the intensity of city advisory bodies. We have a growing number of advisory bodies and a growing agenda level and management of the items brought to advisory bodies. That position is intended to assist with that. It's also intended to support elections. As we know, elections will come with additional administration in the future. It also supports contract management and risk management.
Okay, I feel like it's your call. 35,000 is not a big increase. I do want to say there are other priorities that we're not increasing funding. I remain very concerned about our ability to pave the streets, to maintain the parks, and produce the financial reports. Those are probably the 3 things where I feel the most stress about our ability to get the work done. But I'm supportive of this. I would be supportive if you came back asking for a reduced, if we have too many committees, maybe we've got too many committees. Maybe there are ones that could be combined. Maybe there are ways that there are other approaches. I would be very open to that, but I'm also very open to just increasing the administrative staff if that's the best solution.
Vice Mayor Jordan.
Thank you. On another track, I've realized I'll say some personal demands that came up that I have not tracked the Financial Advisory Committee's consideration of the budget in the way that I'd hoped to by the time I got into this meeting. So I'm wondering if staff could convey their deliberations through the deliberation of that body, because I believe that went on for 2 hours last we've received some perspectives from individual members via email. And actually, maybe we should go to public comment, because I see actually there's now some public comment. And one of the members of the Financial Advisory Committee, who I think is the vice chair, is one of the people who wants to comment. So maybe I was being the straight person there.
All right, we'll take a break and bring it to public comment. It looks like we have 2 hands raised, so you have 2 minutes. Go ahead,
Hi,
please.
Mayor. Oh, this is Kim Tretain. And Mayor Gary, is this the best time to make a comment on the sugar sweetened beverage tax items, or should I wait until later?
Go ahead.
Okay, so first of all, I wanted to thank the council for all of the projects that you're working with as partners with the school district. I am a representative of the Albany Unified School District, and we really, really appreciate how the city of Albany has supported the crossing guards and the Healthy Me program. And this year, we're hopefully going to premiere the Albany Swims program. And hearing the council talk about these programs, it makes me think back about the marvelous things that have been done with the sugar sweetened beverage tax revenues over the past several years. The water bottle filling stations, the free classes for the community that have taken place. You know, we're really incredibly lucky to have this revenue. And I think that the public would like to hear a little bit more about what has been approved and what has been accomplished. I wonder if you might consider putting a sidebar in the activity guide now and then to let people know about it. And then also at the work study session, I recall a council member asking about maybe a survey about what has this really changed your habits of drinking sugar sweetened beverages. And I wanted to say that that the district would be happy to work with the city on making a survey in the coming school year that could report back on that. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, please.
Hello? Can you
Yes,
hear me?
go ahead.
Hi, Jack Kenny, Albany resident and one of the community volunteers for the Albany Film Fest. And I just wanted to take the opportunity to thank the council and staff for all your efforts and support over the years for the last 11 years of the Film Fest. I know you're dealing with a lot of weightier issues right now tonight, but since you're voting on the budget, I wanted to bring this to your attention since it's timely. I'm hoping that we will be able to have another in-person film fest in 2022. And at this point, it doesn't look likely we can have one this year because it takes about 6 months to get film submissions from filmmakers that we get from all over the world. So I'd really like to concentrate on 2022, getting film submissions. And that means that we have to start submissions later this year, like August or September. And that will give lead time to volunteers like myself to do fundraising and to do the other activities that are necessary to have an in-person event. So I appreciate the city's and the council's support for the Film Fest and appreciate what you're doing for the budget and hope we can continue to have a successful event in the future. Thank you.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Hi, I'm not really sure which part of the budget, it's late, so I'm just gonna quickly say the things that I are concerned about. The sugar sweetened beverage, I brought this up, I think at the last meeting, that I feel like these are, interesting events, but I don't see it centering on, I don't see them being truly accessible. I don't see them centering on people, it seems like very privileged, most of the things. And I would like to see the money going towards people who actually could use some programs for them rather than sort of adding on. I also don't think they're very accessible. There's a bicycling one, then there's that. I know that it was explained that the thing down at the walk and roll to the shore event would be sort of accessible because there'd be a van and then people could watch, but that just didn't seem very accessible to me. Concerned about the education campaign, I think that's better if you ask a community what they would like help with, and rather than telling them what they should be doing. People don't really like to be told how to be healthy or what they should do that's right, and you've decided what's right for them. So I would like to see it centered more on shower programs through adding money to the CARES budget, laundry program, broadband and devices, things like that that would affect more people, especially people who more need it. I also wanted to say that I think that the budget in general should be, that the police part of the budget should be frozen, and that there should be more emphasis on social services. And I also wanted to point out that you have a library board liaison in there for $45,000. And as far as I know, their library board has been sunsetted. So I'm not sure why there's a liaison, unless maybe that's something that keeps happening. The garden talks also, I feel like are not accessible. The only thing I think is really making a difference in our community is the Albany Swims, which is really serving a lot of different young people, all ages, all different abilities. And I think that's that should be our goal. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment.
Library liaison, $50,000. Maybe we can use that for a portable shower trailer. Since Julie's right, we did sunset the library board. So who's getting that money? That's kind of interesting. Good catch, Julie. I was gonna say, if we could please save some of that money for the shower program, save some of that money for the laundry program, because apparently laundry program's canceled this week on Thursday for whatever reason. I told everybody to come back this upcoming Thursday, and I'm going to pay for it out of my own pocket, because it's not fair. Homeless people can't wash clothes in a program because either, someone wants a break, or why does the program have to shut down just if one person can't be there? So I stepped in. I said, hey, everybody come Thursday next week, do laundry as program, same time, same place, and I'll pay for it out of my own pocket until Albany can get organized regarding homeless situations, because I brought so many solutions to the table. I bring a shower trailer to Albany. I apologize, Madam McQuaid. I apologize. I did not ask you for permission. And I hope that you can give me another chance and I could learn from my mistake, and I could ask for permission politely somehow in the correct manner to bring a wonderful resource to Albany. Rochelle Nason, Daniel Barth, Facebook. You guys have these resources, but they're just not being tapped in. So I'm trying to network and get everything going, and Lifelong Medical is waiting to help Albany. So just keep some money in the budget. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Is that it, Ann? If not, I'll go to Councilmember Tiedemann. Go ahead, please.
Great. So following up with that, I've got one or two specific questions, then an overall comment on the budget. So just first off, just based on a quick search of two documents, Heather or Nicole, could you confirm we're not actually budgeting a library liaison? That is just a band that is in the salaries, but we're not paying anyone to do that. That's just a thing that used to exist that we still have in the bands of salaries. Cool. That's exactly what I thought. So we don't have that role. On the sugar sweetened beverage tax, I agree with Councilmember McQuaid with her comments earlier on, first on that I would love to see some mental health stuff in here, as I've said last time we talked about this, but also on that this seems a little abrupt in that last time I didn't think we were all saying that this is what we'd like to fund. It was what, we were sort of prioritizing looking at. So I'm curious from staff, is there a way we can pass the budget without passing, what we're going to do with the sugar sweetened beverage tax, and discuss this later? Because it seems like there's a lot to discuss here of what we really want to fund, and we could spend several more hours talking about it from the amount of time we spent on it now. And we have a lot of other resolutions as well as two other items on our agenda to pass.
Heather, please interrupt me or correct me as needed. Yes, you could adopt the budget and indicate that for the items earmarked to be well, except for one, the crossing guard program, I would encourage to remain on track for critical reasons. But with the rest of the sugar sweetened beverage tax items, we could return to the council with another discussion on the application of those funds for additional guidance to staff on prioritization and implementation and potentially other uses of the funds. Adopting the budget, something I should have added to my initial comments. This is a living document. I know it doesn't feel like it, but it really is, because we return to you quarterly with updates to the budget, and we could certainly schedule a mid-year adjustment or any adjustment thereof. So Heather, please feel free to add any additional detail to that.
No, that's exactly it. I think I want to address something that came up a while ago regarding the balance of how much money was spent. And I think it's making it seem like programs didn't happen. That's not necessarily the case. There's a couple of things that go into that balance, the amount left over between what we brought in and what we spent. First, we didn't allocate to spend anything in fiscal year 2017 because we weren't sure what was coming in. We had no idea how much tax this was going to raise. So that started it with a balance. And then there are certain programs that just didn't cost as much as we thought they were going to. So that added to that balance. And then in a couple of years, we brought in more money than we thought we would. So again, there's more money that came in than was programmed to be spent. So it's not that we didn't do the programs, it's that there was money left over, or we brought in more than we thought we would, and so we hadn't budgeted to expend it. So that's really where that money is. And I think that that's important. And yes, we can take this out at any point in time. Anything that you want to take out of the budget right now, you can just motion to do that. Again, if you say you don't want to fund any of it or you want to bring it back later, starting July 1st, I don't have the money to pay crossing guard. Well, it's there, but it means it takes out of other things. So you just have to be very clear what you're trying to take out.
Great, thank you. And thanks for offering that solution. I'd love to, take up more of the sugar sweetened beverage tax later and do the crossing guards now and have that deeper discussion and pass the rest of the budget. Going off, Nicole, what you said of, this is a living document, I appreciate you saying that, as I think that's important to keep in mind, especially as, we look at the higher level of things. I'm really happy to serve with everyone on this council because they immediately focus on the details. When I look at this, I immediately focus on the really bigger picture ideas. And that's what I think a couple commenters, both in this meeting and that we've gotten in emails, have focused on. And so I wanted to say a couple words about that. In that, first off, I would love to, reallocate some of our funding, especially on our police budget. I don't think we're going to do that right now because it needs to be part of a huge conversation about what we want to use for that funding and how we're going to use it. We had people in emails suggest something like the Cahoots program, which is a great program, it's a great idea. We can't do that right now. It would take a hell of a lot of work. And I think we're starting to do that work with the task force. And I know I am myself working on solutions there to figure out how we can reallocate those funds to support, the services that we want to support. I'd say that's one big ticket from this, looking at this whole budget booklet. And is a reason people should keep looking at this and keep viewing it as a living document and keep, advocating for what you want to see happen, because it's not over now because we passed this budget. It's a very much a continuing conversation, which I know is frustrating, but is how it has to work because we have to be careful and figure things out. I'd say the other big thing is that we hear a lot about, making our city accountable and making how we spend money accountable. I think Heather has done a great job of, making this very detailed and showing how we're spending money and why, and improving this process so that it is clear if you spend the time. And I think the message we're getting from that accountability and having everything laid out before us is that we're shoestringing along. We're running at deficits, and that's not even considering some of the big purchases that we're probably going to have to make, new fire equipment, unexpected costs around stuff like the hill that we'd heard about earlier tonight, or, the truly unexpected stuff that could happen anytime to a city like us. So I think we are going to have to start thinking about how we raise that money and what we're going to do. And luckily, I think we're in a place where we can raise it. We just have to be progressive about how we raise money, and, charge everyone according to their ability to pay, and figure out how we're going to spend it first of all, but then figure out how we're going to raise it. But none of us want to see any services taken away. We may want to see them reallocated, but I think we're going to have to do both. We're going to have to both raise money and reallocate some services. So I think that's one of the big lessons for everyone to take from this. And that's going to be a thing we're going to have to keep discussing this year. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Tuma. I think Councilmember McCoy, did you have a question?
I had
a
comment.
Okay.
I also want to say that there's a member of the public who is on the Financial Advisory Committee who now has his hand up. I don't know if you want to go to him before me or after.
Yeah, I'll go to him. I'm sorry, I didn't see his hand up before we close public comment. And if you can let him in briefly.
Okay, thank you. Can you all hear me all right?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. So this is Mark Priven, and I am on the Financial Advisory Committee. And first of all, I just want to give a big thanks to Heather Rowden for really helping us. She's always been very, very prepared, very patient in explaining the finances to a bunch of finance people who don't necessarily understand municipal finance at all, and answering our questions. So I can't really speak on behalf of the committee in general. I'll just talk on my own opinion. And I think Councilmember Tiedemann, you expressed a lot of what I was thinking, and I think a lot of what the conversation at the committee was talking about, which is the big picture. And that is that the big picture is over the next couple of years, the budget appears to be budgeting a deficit. And it makes sense in some circumstances, maybe, to budget a deficit if you have a ton of money you want to spend down, or if you have some, one-time expense that's going to go away or something like that. But that's not what appears to be happening with the city in the next couple of years. In fact, quite the opposite. It looks like expenses are probably going to be going up with pensions and so forth. And so there is going to need to be some sort of reckoning, some sort of, what do you call it, strategic planning or prioritization or something. And I'll just say that I know myself and the Finance Committee Advisory Committee look forward to helping out with that. But we really see that as a necessary next step to figure out how to bring things back into balance. Thanks.
Thank you for your comment. I'll go ahead and bring it in. Councilmember McQuaid and Councilmember Nason, and we're going to wrap this up and go to the next resolution. Go ahead, please.
Okay, thank you. I think I neglected earlier, Heather, to thank you for this budget booklet. It's so comprehensive. It's great. I really appreciated getting it. And I also want to give a shout out to the Financial Advisory Committee. I've watched all of their meetings, and they are committed to helping us and committed to learning all they can about municipal finance. And it's just really great to see such a professional group working so well together. I want to just kind of reiterate what other people have said, that increasing our revenue is going to be critical going forward. And I hope in our hopefully upcoming strategic planning sessions that we start exploring options for increasing revenue. And as far as SSB, the two that I'm more concerned about, and I think I heard this from somebody else, are the education and the gardening. So I wonder if we could pull those two out and go ahead with the rest of it. I don't know if the swimming is going to happen this summer, but I certainly don't want to stand in the way of that. So those would be the two I would maybe suggest that we pull for right now.
Okay, Councilmember Nixon.
Yeah, I wanted to touch just briefly on the sort of big picture issue And that is, and correct one thing, there was a suggestion that we have been running deficits. And in fact, we've actually been budgeting deficits, enormous deficits, and we're doing it again. We're going up from we've got 20, a budget. We've got this past year, we spent about $20 million, and now we're going to budget like 25 million. We have these big, we have a huge increase here, but that doesn't mean we're actually incurring deficits. We're actually tend to incur surpluses. And that's a budgeting practice that I think we probably should revisit in the future. I think part of the reason for it, and we had this discussion in connection with the police budget, is that we budget what we need rather than what we actually expect to spend. So, while we've had falling police budgets year after year, we've had falling police expenditures, but year after year, larger and larger police budgets until we get to the place where there's millions of dollars difference between the budget and what we actually spend. And I understand that's now kind of coming together. The budget is smaller, but the actual expenditures will probably look a lot more like the budget. But I think that the way to get beyond this practice, and I think that Heather is doing a great job of moving us in this direction. But what we really need is we need long-term planning. We need year over year to look out over the years and see what we can expect, especially in terms of what's going to come in from CalPERS in the way of what we're going to have to pay. So I'm still, you've all heard me on this probably many times if you've been watching, even before you joined the council to the new people. A long-term plan is what we really need. Thanks.
Thank you. And I want to piggyback on that. I think there need to be some accountability measures to this money as well, to make sure that the money is actually being used for what has been put in place. So I just want to say that. Councilmember McQuaid.
Yeah, I'd like to ask I'm not quite sure I'm understanding what you're saying by that.
I mean, it's just like the social, the beverage tax, the facts that, we're still talking about a report that should have been done possibly in the inception. I wasn't here then, but it's just that, money is just going out. Things are being placed in miscellaneous, without, the accountability measures on it. So that's what I was referring to as I look at the budget in whole. There's one section in the fire department where it's like 179,000, then the next year is 3,000. What happened?
Okay.
So that's the thing, is that if we're going to move this budget forward, like Councilmember McQuaid, we do need a long-term plan. We can't just be putting money in places where there's no accountability measures. That's all I'm saying.
Well, I would say that we're not doing that, but I also think that it's almost 10:30. We need to move forward.
So with that said, do I have a motion for this resolution to move forward so we can go to the next?
So if I may, there was one other issue I want to raise, which is that the pension override fund is really specific to public safety. It is by what the book that has been handed to us. Its genesis was to fund public safety pensions, but the way that it's accounted for now is it seems to be just into the pool of the general government section and the unfunded pension liability. So I think it would be clearer if that fund was specifically shown as revenue that was apportioned appropriately to the fire department and the police department, since it really is specific to those departments. So I'll go ahead and make a motion.
Go ahead.
With that all in there. So I'll move resolution 2021-57 with the proviso that the pension override fund revenue be attributed to the police department and the fire department in appropriate portions to the extent that it is divided in supporting the pensions for personnel in those two departments. And remove the education and the garden talk commitment from the sugar sweetened beverage tax.
Councilmember McQuaid?
Yeah, I'm not quite sure about the pension fund. Heather, does that make sense? Does that work for you? I just don't want to get us, I don't want to get me in a position of not really understanding what we're doing and have it not be the best thing.
So it makes sense for current costs because those costs are allocated specifically to the police and fire departments. The unfunded liability is a little bit different because while it's super easy to, say, okay, police cost this much and fire cost this much, allocating it to the rest of the departments is basically impossible for me. So I put all of the unfunded liability under non-departmental because I don't want to treat police and fire unfairly and add an expense there that's not in all of the other departments. So I can easily do that and have it be apples to apples with the current portion, but the unfunded liability, I'm not super comfortable putting it there. I also want to clarify that that's more a presentation thing than an actual resolution thing, because the resolution is specifically saying, here's the money that we're appropriating.
Okay.
So.
Fair enough. So that could be a separate motion. Or not. Okay. So yeah, I'll take that out of this resolution frame and make it as a separate motion. Thank you, Director Rowden. So now the motion would stand is to pass the resolution with just removing the education and I think garden talk components of the sugar sweetened beverage tax expenditure.
And I'll second that.
Councilmember Tiedemann?
This may not be the will of the council, but I'd also remove the funding for the walk and roll to the shore event. I know we cut this in half, but it's still, in my opinion, a lot of money for a one-day event compared to all the other programs. But I leave that to everyone else.
Yeah, I mean, my preference is to leave it in because I think there is, even if it only happens once, I think there's great benefit to potentially, we'll see, but to showing people how they can actually access this much enhanced park space that has been built out there without getting in their vehicles. It's not something I would see funding every year, but I think as a one-time education effort, I think it'd be helpful, particularly because it's pretty hard to drive out there now because it's so popular. Yeah.
I agree with Vice Mayor Jordan. I'd like to see us do this and we can reevaluate how it worked after it's done. I think it's well worth it.
All right, thank you, Councilmember Tiedemann. Go ahead for a roll call. And
Councilmember Tiedemann?
Yes.
Mayor Gary?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Jordan?
Yes.
Councilmember McQuaid?
Yes.
Councilmember Nason?
Yes.
Motion
Okay.
carries.
Go to resolution 2021-58. Any questions, comments, concerns, discussion?
Well, I'm actually going to propose maybe something kind of radical. I suspect there probably won't be much discussion, maybe, or we could pass if the city attorney thinks it's okay. Maybe we could do a motion on more than one resolution at a time.
Right. If we can do all of them, is that okay?
I mean, I have some discussion on some of them. So maybe we could do a sort of consent calendar approach right here and poll who wants to talk, which ones does anybody have any discussion about? We can just pass all the other ones in one motion.
And that's fine as long as we allow the public comment on those items as well.
Okay. All right. So the next item is 2021-58.
Any discussion? Vice Mayor Jordan, your hand's
Oops.
up for this.
Sorry about that.
Okay, never mind. Let's see if we have any public comment. Looks like we don't. All right, go ahead and get a motion. If there's no concern, unless Councilmember McQuaid, you have something you want to say?
I was going to move approval, but then I remembered, are we pulling different resolutions to talk to the ones we want to talk to? Was that your thought, Vice Mayor Jordan?
Yes, that was my suggestion. So maybe to make it a little more real. The only one I want to talk about is 59, the master fee schedule. All the other ones I have no discussion on.
Councilmember McQuaid, anyone you want to pull?
No, but I'd like to make a motion. We extend till 11. It's almost 10:30.
Seconded.
All right, go ahead and do a roll call.
Vice Mayor Jordan,
Yes.
Councilmember McQuay,
Yes.
Councilmember Nason,
Yes.
Councilmember Tiedemann,
Yes.
and Mayor Gary.
Yes. All right, anyone, Councilmember McQuaid, do you have any items you want to pull on this? Nope. Councilmember Tiedemann? Nope, and Councilmember Nason? All right, Vice Mayor Jordan, if you want to address the questions that you have, and then we'll.
Okay, sure. So in, I think it was section 2 of the master fee schedule, it opens with something that just says license fees. And it's in the section that I think says business and other license fees or something like that. It's not clear what those license fees, what kind of license that refers to. So I don't know if staff can provide some specificity, but I think there needs to be an extra word in there so that when the public looks at it, or when I look at it as a council member, I know what that's referring to. And I could try to bring it up on my screen while staff is.
I think it's page 37.
Yeah.
Oh, great. Thank you.
So those are specific to business licenses. There's a difference between the business license fee and the business license taxes. There's an administrative fee allowed by the state for the issuance, the cost of issuance of the licenses. So this is the fee associated with issuing the license, and then the taxes come separately.
So would it be accurate to ahead of license, because the next section, and again, I'll share my screen real quick. The next section is dog license.
Mm-hmm.
So it appears as, license fees and then dog license. So it's kind of like, well, okay, so would it be appropriate to put business in there? I know this is nitpicking, but business license fees. Okay. I just think that would be clearer. I propose to zero out the candidate statement fee so that the city would bear that cost, because, obviously we don't have enough candidates in this city. And the way it's framed now is it's basically a pass through of the cost of the registrar. It's about $1,000. We don't have enough candidates. This is something we can do to try to support having more candidates. So I propose zeroing that out. I don't know what other council members think. I mean, it's a very small amount of money compared to the entirety of the budget.
So, President, am I muted? Are you suggesting that we don't charge a fee for that?
Yes.
I think that's probably something we should ask to be placed on a future agenda.
Yeah, I do too. I don't think this is an appropriate time for that.
Okay, fair enough. I will bring that up in the future agenda section. And probably with that, the only other thing I had was there's a place where I can't remember, it's somewhere in here where it says per square foot, but it doesn't state if it's per building square foot, per building footprint square foot, per parcel square foot. And if I can find it, I will get there, but I think there needs to be another word to make clear what the units of measure are on that. I'm sorry, I don't have it right in front of me. I know I did send a question to staff earlier today about this. Stop sharing, see if I can find that.
10 cent per foot.
Storm drain fee.
Yeah, storm drain fee, that was it.
Yeah. So if the specific unit that's clear and unambiguous could be substituted in there.
Sure.
If it's per bill, I don't know if it's interior, square footage as measured by the county assessor. I don't know if it's square footage in terms of the building footprint, which kind of would make more sense in some ways for a storm drain fee. But we can just leave that for staff to clarify. And with those two, I will leave it at that.
All right, thank you, Vice Mayor Jordan. I have a question on page 118, and this is under revenues, where it says under revenues in 2019, the actual was 179,000, but in 2020, it says the actual was 3,573. So if you can explain to me about that, that's what I brought up, so I can have a better understanding on that.
Sure, definitely. So this is something where I think in previous iterations, mutual aid got lumped under other revenue for fire. It should probably be under revenues from other agencies, but that's mutual aid. And in 2020, the fire department went through a period of time where somebody had retired and they were understaffed and they weren't able to attend certain wildfires. So we didn't get any we didn't spend anything on mutual aid, so we didn't receive any mutual aid. It's a reimbursement.
Thank you. All right, I'll go to public comment, see if there's anything public would like to speak on. Doesn't appear to be. Come back to the council. We have a motion.
So I will move resolutions 2021 58, 59, 60, and 61.
What about 62? No?
Oh, sorry, yes, and 62, I apologize.
I'll second.
Do I have a roll call?
Councilmember Nason,
Yes.
Councilmember Tiedemann,
Yes.
Mayor Gary,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Jordan,
Yes.
Councilmember McQuaid.
Yes.
The motion carries.
Thank you. Looks like we're moving down to item number 10. We have no unfinished business due to the fact that it's 10:32. Just want to make a suggestion if we could move those to next council, or if you feel that we can get through them before 11 o'clock.
May I just note that the EBCE item does need action. The other item is up to council decision.
So you're saying 11:2? Nicole? No, 11:2? Okay. So if we can move 11:1 to the Councilmember McQuaid, can you?
I'm sorry,
Can we move 11:2 to the next to the next council, and then we can discuss 11:2. I'm sorry, 11:1 to 11:2. We can discuss. Okay.
Perfect.
All right. Go ahead, Councilmember Nason.
Could we take a couple of minute break?
Okay, we can. Let's go ahead and take a 5-minute break. Thank you.
Thanks.
All right, we'll go ahead and start with item number 11.2. It is 10:38. And I can hear a report from the staff.
Good evening, City Council members. My name is Lizzie Carrot. I'm the Sustainability Coordinator with the City of Albany. And then I should also be joined soon by Alex DeGiorgio with East Bay Community Energy. As you know from previous meetings, previous council action, and from the staff report, East Bay Community Energy is our community choice aggregator providing clean energy to Albany and other Alameda County cities. The action before the council is to choose a new default product or products for the following City of Albany customer accounts: residential, commercial industrial, and Care FIRA medical baseline. The reason for this default product switch is because our current default product for all accounts except for municipal in the City of Albany is Brilliant 100, which is 100% carbon-free energy provided at the same rate as PG&E's standard rates, but that product will be sunsetting. EBCE will be sunsetting that project on December 31st, and so we will need a new product to take effect for the remaining accounts to start January 1st. Committee recommended that the council opt all accounts that are currently on Brilliant 100 into the Renewable 100 EBCE electricity product, which is 100% renewable energy offered at 1 penny per kilowatt hour more than PG&E's standard rates, except for Care FIRA medical baseline customers. The Climate Action Committee recommended that those customers be placed on Bright Choice, which is it was 86% carbon-free in 2019, offered at a 1% discount to PG&E's standard rates. All City of Albany municipal accounts are currently on the Renewable 100 product, and at this time, staff does not recommend that we change that default product option, but if the council wished to open that back up for discussion, the council is welcome to do so. That is all I have as a staff report right now. I'm available for questions. Alex DeGiorgio is available for questions. And we look forward to the discussion.
All right, thank you so much, Elizabeth and Alice. I'll go ahead and open up discussion for City Council members. Vice Mayor Jordan, go ahead, please.
Yeah, I had a question about the, it's a little bit aside, but the time of use. So not being immersed in this, I've sort of gotten hints that everybody's going to have to go to time of use. Some people are going to go time of use. Everybody is going to go, and then you can come back if you want. And I don't know if you could explain anything about that.
Alex, if you don't mind taking that one.
Sure. Hello, Mayor Gary, members of the City Council, City staff. Hello, Vice Mayor Jordan. Yes, so the time of use transition has occurred in May, and it does apply to everyone except that people can opt out. And there's been about a 17% opt-out rate. So it has occurred. Most people are now going to be on time of use rate schedules. There is bill protection for the first year, so that if people end up spending, it's expected that people will spend less money on time of use rates, but if they don't for the first year, they'll be compensated for the additional that they spent compared to last year.
Interesting. Thank you. I don't have any other questions, so if you go to other council members, I have thoughts, but not more questions.
Any other council members have any thoughts, questions? If not, I'll go ahead and see if there's any public comment or questions. There are two individuals. Go ahead, please, and let them in. Go ahead, Tom, you're on mute.
Thank you, Mayor Gary, members of the City Council. I've had the opportunity to speak to Albany City Council on a number of occasions related to the formation of East Bay Community Energy. And in fact, just historically, you were on the threshold of actually joining Marin Clean Energy back in early 2014 and agreed to wait until EBCE had actually formed. And that process took several years. But That I thought was an incredibly brave decision on the city's part because a lot of work had gone into that decision to join MCE. In fact, if you had joined the MCE, there probably wouldn't be an EBCE, just the way those things work. I'm calling to urge you to vote to opt everyone up to Renewable 100. The increase in price is modest, but it's got some great benefits. It will put Californians to work as EBCE ramps up its purchase of renewable power. It will address the climate crisis that we're all very aware of. And it will, over time, I think we'll be able to find a solution to including the CareFera medical baseline customers in that as well without any increase in their rates. So I'm going to leave it there. I urge you to vote yes on this, to opt up. You'll find that concerns about opt-outs and the EBCE's financial health and everything will not be at all affected by that decision. So thanks very much.
Thank you for your comment. Next, please.
Hi, can you guys hear
Hello.
me?
Yes, we can. Go ahead, please.
Thanks, Mary Gary and members of the City Council. My name's Daniel Chen, and I'm a resident in the City of Albany, and I'm actually the acting chair for the Albany Climate Action Committee as well. But tonight, I'd like to offer public comment as an individual. Similar to the previous commenter, I urge the council to adopt the recommendation of the committee and city staff to opt businesses and residents up to the Renewable 100 plan while protecting the most vulnerable members of our community with the Bright Choice plan. I'm really proud of the previous decision of the council to adopt the carbon-free Brilliant 100 plan. And I honestly think that that decision has represented one of the largest greenhouse gas emissions reductions that the city has ever experienced. I appreciate that the council is mindful of climate emergencies that have become part of everyday life. Wildfires that have destroyed the homes and livelihoods of friends and family all around the Bay Area, smoke that's clogged the air and exacerbated health issues, and the horrifying experience of witnessing an orange haze blocking out the sun. I understand that not every business and not every individual will be ready to opt up to 100% renewable energy. Times have been tough with the pandemic, and it's been a super challenging year. And fortunately, those who aren't ready or able to opt up always have the option to adopt a perfectly reasonable alternative Bright Choice plan. However, I believe that as a city, we have to take action now to empower our energy suppliers to make the best investments to protect our future. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your comment. Looks like you were the last comment participant. I'll go ahead and bring it back to the council for further discussion. If there's none, we'll go ahead and take a motion. Councilmember Tiedemann, go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to briefly say, as the EBC rep, I think this is the obvious and correct solution of what we should do. The only really real alternative would be to think about having EBC design a new product mix, which I think Lizzie brought to my attention a couple of months ago as an option, but I don't think we need to do now. And if we were interested in eventually getting one of those, we could explore it in the future. But for this default right now, I think this is the right choice.
All right, thank you. Do I have a motion to move this forward, Councilmember McQuaid?
Well, I have more discussion. Yeah. Oh, sorry.
Hold on, let me get
Yep.
Councilmember McQuaid.
Thank you. Yeah, I think this is the right thing to do too. I'm still disappointed at the way this has played out, but that's fine. I really don't like having to separate out and feel like I have to separate out the CARE and the FARA people. It feels almost like we're othering them, but I certainly don't want to raise their rates. And I think this is the best solution that we have. Hopefully at some point there'll be a better solution.
So I guess I'll go ahead. So been talking with a lot of professionals in the building electrification world, and there's an interesting epiphany in those conversations, which is that because Bright Choice is 86% global warming pollution free. The real need now is to get everything on electric. And operating a heat pump water heater at this point is kind of on the cusp of being more expensive than operating a gas water heater, setting aside the capital expenditure. And so going with Bright Choice actually will push in the direction of being able to say, if you get a heat pump water heater, your operating costs will be less, which is, an important point to be able to make. All the electricity in the state is headed to totally carbon free. And the way I see it, there's, we need to have a meeting point where we're increasing building electrification. And at the point we get to 100% building electrification, we're also meeting 100% carbon-free electricity. By taking the choice of 100% carbon-free now, we might stall to some slight extent the development of the building electrification market in Albany. And so I'm actually in support, again, somewhat to my surprise, I didn't think this was where I would be, of opting all accounts into Bright Choice other than the municipal accounts. So that we get that 4% reduction compared to Renewable 100 and help to stoke the building electrification market, which is what we really need to happen if we're going to make our next target. We are not going to make our next target by having the difference between Renewable 100 and Bright Choice. We need much more dramatic change.
Councilmember Nason?
Yeah, I completely agree with the importance of getting people to electrify, but remember, these are only defaults. So people can still opt. People who are very sensitive to the maintenance, to their maintenance, can still opt to Bright Choice. And CARES and FERA people who are eager to be part of the team on sustainability and can afford it can opt up. So I don't see much benefit to choosing the less environmentally preferred default. I do think with electrification, it's the entry cost that is the barrier. It's the cost of doing it in the first place, much more than that's a huge disincentive. Saving money on bills over time is a low incentive, is my experience of it.
Thank you, Councilmember Nason. Any other discussion?
Yeah, I mean, I guess because of that, I feel that we need to throw everything we can into making it more economic, even if it's a mostly rhetorical argument. But not hearing a lot of support for that perspective. So thanks for hearing me out.
Thank you. Councilmember Tiedemann?
So I'd move that we pass resolution 2021-55.
A second. And can you do a roll call, please?
Mayor Gary,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Jordan,
Yes.
Councilmember McQuay,
Yes.
Councilmember Nason,
Yes.
Councilmember Tiedemann.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Thank you, staff.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, Al.
Have a great evening.
You as well. Now we'll move to item number 12 with the council subcommittee reports and meetings. I'll start with Councilmember Tiedemann. Anything to report?
I don't
Vice
think
Mayor
I have
Jordan?
anything.
Oh, sorry. Vice Mayor Jordan?
Yes, there's a meeting of the Stop Waste Board, Waste Management Energy Council. We went through an ordinance, almost finalized ordinance that is in the process of being headed to adoption by that agency to set compliance with SB 1383, which requires cities to purchase organic products made from organic waste, as well as engage in food diversion, usable food diversion from the waste stream. And So that's coming, and in the fall, they will have subsidiary ordinances that the jurisdictions in the county can adopt to teeter off that ordinance. So that is something that we'll need to be looking at in the fall. But fortunately, we have this county agency that can sort of take the brunt of setting up the framework for us.
Yes, thank you. Councilmember McCoy?
Yeah, I, like probably the rest of you, attended a lot of webinars. The Everyone Home Leadership Board, East Bay Division of Cal Cities, the board meeting, the division meeting, and 2 policy committee meetings.
Councilmember Nason?
Yes, like Council Member McQuaid says, many Zooms, including the division meeting, Park Advisory Committee meeting, whatever, various things. The only official meeting that I attended was the Alameda County Transportation Commission meeting, at which we received the primary thing was the Plan Bay Area 2050 update. Very big deal, but nothing. We did not have any decision items specifically affecting Albany.
Thank you. I have nothing to report at this time. We'll go to item number 13. Any future agenda items? Councilmember Nason.
Yeah, I would like to have an opportunity in July, if possible, to do a short presentation about needs at the recreation type needs at the Albany waterfront. I will send out a memo on that in advance.
Councilmember Tiedemann?
I've got one I'm working on in opposition to AB 1139, which is a solar bill that's coming through that EBCE will also be working on, so we'll probably hear from them as well.
Okay. Vice Mayor Jordan?
Yeah, just raising the candidate statement fee again, and that's not necessarily something we need to handle before the August break, but I also don't want to lose track of it, so I'm not sure if there's a mechanism for that.
And Councilmember McCoy? Yep.
Nothing right now.
All right, thank you so much. Looks like we have everything. I would like you to govern yourself to the upcoming meetings. And item number 14. Is there anything anyone would like to say before I adjourn the meeting? All right, I would like to thank our Vice Mayor Jordan, Councilmember Nason, Councilmember McQuaid, and Councilmember Tiedemann, City Attorney and City Manager and staff for this wonderful meeting. With that said, I hope you have a great week and meeting adjourned. Good evening.
Thank you. Good night.